Chapter 803. After 2 days, Lung Shiqi was summoned to the palace. According to his intention, he still wanted to recover for a period of time. His injuries were very serious, and he had overdrawn a lot of his strength. He needed a long time to recover. Even though he had many heavenly treasures on him that could increase his recovery speed, it would take at least 1 or 2 months for him to recover to his peak state. Right now, he could at most use 40% of his strength. Fortunately, he was in the capital, and there should be no problem with a large number of experts guarding him. The reason why he was in such a hurry to enter the palace was because he wanted to take advantage of the time when his prestige was at its peak to have more confidence. When Lung Shiqi stepped into the palace hall, all the other officials had already arrived. Everyone was looking at him. Everyone's eyes were different. There was admiration, reverence, envy, jealousy, and of course, dissatisfaction. It could be said that life was filled with all kinds of emotions. Lung Shiqi walked to the center of the hall and said righteously, "Your Majesty, I did not disappoint you. I have already cleared the beast tide in the demonic Miasma mountain range." The sole avatar on the dragon throne laughed heartily. Not only did Minister Lu get rid of the beast tide, he also caught the Northern Way Empire behind it. This is a great contribution. This is all thanks to your Majesty. I dare not claim any credit. What are you talking about? Today, I summoned Minister Lu here to reward him. I have already drafted a decree. Zwang. The little eunuch immediately held up an imperial decree and read it aloud. By the will of the heavens, the Emperor decrees that Lu Xingji, one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards, has wiped out the beast tide and destroyed the Northern Way Empire's conspiracy. He is specially conferred the title of Prince. Conferred the title of Prince. Prince with a different surname? Boom! The imperial court exploded in an uproar. Since ancient times, there were very few princes in each generation. Only the more outstanding princes had the chance to be conferred the title of Prince. Moreover, every time there was a change in the imperial power, there would be a few princes who would die. This was a common occurrence. As for princes with different surnames, there were less than 10 of them since the establishment of the Thunderflame dynasty. Those who were conferred the title of Prince were all people who had made great contributions. They were even people who had helped the Thunderflame dynasty conquer this land. But what about Lung Shiqi? Even though he had exterminated the beast tide and killed the head of the Northern Way Empire's Hall of Consecration in a few days, which was a great achievement, he was still not qualified to be conferred the title of king. The soul doppelganger frowned and circulated the spiritual energy in its body. Waves of invisible pressure filled the hall. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines and lowered their heads in silence. Zwang, read it again. Lu Xingji was a supervisor in the West Baron State with his spirit pulse realm cultivation. During that period of time, his rule was peaceful. He even uncovered the smuggling of refined iron in Zhu State and exterminated the Xianyang sect, after which he sent an envoy to Zhu Lu country, secretly forcing them to submit to the Emperor dynasty due to the internal chaos. He was promoted to the supervisor of North County in Gang Spirit Realm. He took part in the elite meeting and then entered the headquarters of Dark Thunder Guards to become the supervisor. During the trip to Shantai County, he had eliminated the Thunder Extermination Alliance and their accomplice, the Sky Crane Gang, and obtained the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl from Kong Hen Tian. He had been recognized by the late Emperor and was specially appointed as one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards. He was ordered to destroy the top sect, the Thousand Illusions Sword Sect, and killed the Thousand Illusions Sword Master by himself to turn the situation around. Not long ago, many masters entered the palace, and the Emperor dynasty was in danger. Lu Xingji was not afraid of danger and stepped forward bravely, showing the true colors of the Emperor dynasty. Since His Majesty ascended the throne, the biggest hidden danger of the Emperor dynasty was the spiritual cultivation sections. Lu Xingji planned the world's first spiritual cultivator conference and made the sects in the world fight for themselves. Now, they can't even take care of themselves, and the crisis of the Emperor dynasty has disappeared. A few days ago, there was a monster tide in the demon Miasma Mountain, and the Northern Wei dynasty intervened. Lu Xingji took the risk and won a great victory. Zhuang stopped here. He briefly described the experience of Lung Shiqi along the way, but all the courtiers were silent, because this experience was simply too shocking. If this experience was spread to several people, it would be enough to be praised. But it happened to one person. It was too terrible. Lung Shiqi's strength and ability were too terrifying. He was always able to survive in desperate situations. What was even more terrifying was the speed of his growth. Only a few years had passed since he entered the Dark Lightning Guards in the West Desolate Province. If it was an ordinary person, it would be very good if they could become a great supervisor in such a short time. But Lung Shiqi was now one of the 4 great supervisors and Jinling Duke, who had the power to act as the great commander. Now, he was about to be conferred the title of king. If not for everyone hearing it with their own ears, they might have treated this as a joke. Seeing that all the courtiers were silent, the soul doppelganger said, "I didn't want to say much. In my opinion, a trusted official like Lu Xingji is not even enough to be a king. I understand your thoughts, but think about it. When Sixth Direction Spirit Sovereign brought a large number of spiritual cultivation sect experts to attack the Emperor Palace, who was the first to stand up? Lu Xingji was willing to die to protect the dignity of the Thunderblaze dynasty. This courage and this loyalty are rarely seen. A mere king is nothing." The courtiers' expressions began to waver. There were many reasons why they were not willing to let Lung Shiqi be conferred the title of king. But all of them had a common reason. They were afraid that Lung Shiqi's achievements would overshadow the emperor's and cause chaos in the Thunderblaze dynasty. Perhaps he did not have such thoughts now, but what about in the future? People change. At this time, Mo Linhui took 2 steps forward. He knew that it was time for him to appear. "Head Steward Liu, I have a question to ask." Lung Shiqi knew that this old thing was about to start acting. "Minister Mo, please ask." According to the rules of the imperial dynasty, all kings with different surnames will have their own fief. May I ask if Supervisor Liu is willing to stay in the imperial capital or have your own fief? When the others heard this, they immediately perked up. If Lung Shiqi was conferred the title of king, he would naturally have to go to his own fief. That would mean that he would have to leave the imperial capital, the center of power. Although he had a lot of power in his fief and could be called a country within a country, he was not much of a threat. Because in this world, if you wanted to rebel, you not only needed the number of soldiers, but also the number of experts. In terms of experts, could you have more than a Thunderblaze dynasty? Therefore, once you were conferred the title of king, it meant that your power was almost at its peak. In the past, all the kings with different surnames were like this. They wanted to eliminate the potential threats of these people. Moreover, everyone thought of another layer. That was that Lung Shiqi going to his fief seemed to conflict with the position of Dark Thunderguard Commander. The Dark Thunderguard Commander had to stay in the imperial capital headquarters. But after being conferred the title of king, he would have to go to his fief. How would he choose? Thinking of this, the courtiers felt a little better. In their eyes, the position of Dark Thunderguard Commander was even more tempting than being conferred the title of king. It was a position that controlled the intelligence of the entire Thunderblaze dynasty and held countless secrets. In this world, if there was one person that no one wanted to offend, it would definitely be the Dark Thunderguard Commander. Originally, Lung Shiqi could have taken over the position of Dark Thunderguard Commander after breaking through to Sky Origin Stage. But now, if he accepted the title of king and went to his fief, the position of Great Commander would basically be abolished. And if he wanted the position of Great Commander, he would have to reject being conferred the title of king. When the courtiers understood this, they immediately felt that their emperor was playing a trick of a promotion in name, but a demotion in reality. He was truly far-sighted. They also wanted to see how Lung Shiqi would choose. Lung Shiqi said without hesitation, "This subject is naturally willing to follow the rules of the imperial capital and go to his fief." Chapter 804. Lung Shiqi's casual words stunned Mo Linhui and the other officials. Being the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards and being conferred the title of king were both great benefits. Different people might have different choices if they wanted to control the intelligence of the world or be a prince who controlled a region. But to make such a decision, he had to think it through carefully. However, Lung Shiqi's reply was too fast. Lung Shiqi looked around and took in everyone's expressions. He laughed and said, "Officials, I believe none of you want to see me take the position of commander of the Dark Thunder Guards." The officials were stunned because Lung Shiqi's words hit the nail on the head. Today, including the previous reward, they were all against Lung Shiqi. Once he became the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards in the future, he would have their weak points in his hands. Who among those present dared to say that they were clean? Even if there was only the slightest bit of uncleanliness, it would still be used as a topic of discussion. It was no secret that Lung Shiqi was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Apart from this, I know what you're worried about. You're afraid that my achievements will overshadow your master. Since that's the case, let me leave the imperial capital and let you be at ease. Head Steward Liu is righteous. Mo Lin Hui suddenly shouted. These people made everyone feel a little guilty. Look at them. In order to eliminate the groundless threat, they gave up the position of commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. Just this point alone was enough to make people admire them. However, some people felt that it was a little strange. With their understanding of Lung Shiqi, he was not someone who would easily be taken advantage of. As expected, Lung Shiqi turned to the dragon throne and said, "However, I also have a condition." The soul clone stretched out his hand and said, "Dear official, there is no harm in saying it. I want to choose a piece of land for myself." The others immediately fell into deep thought. The Thunderflame dynasty had a total of 36 provinces. Naturally, there were many differences. Some provinces had thin spirit chi, and the people worked hard. Some provinces were rich and could be called heavens. There was still a huge gap between them. In the past, no matter if it was a prince or a prince with a different surname, they did not have the right to choose their own fief. It was a decision made after much consideration. However, Lung Shiqi had given up the position of commander of the Dark Thunder Guards and was willing to go to the fief. It seemed reasonable to let him choose a prefecture. The Soul Avatar looked around and saw that no one was going to object. He said, "Of course, bring me the map." Soon, the two eunuchs unfurled the map of the Thunderflame dynasty in the hall. There were 36 provinces and some markings on it. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the map. The most fertile places were Donglin County, Pinghui County, and other places. These states and counties were adjacent to the ocean and had countless rare resources. Moreover, there was no threat from other dynasties. Only the overseas forces were weak and couldn't threaten the Thunderblaze dynasty at all. It was simply a place to pick up money. Moreover, the 9 eastern counties that Lung Shiqi was in charge of included these places. Therefore, everyone thought that he would choose this place. Lung Shiqi stood still for a while and pointed at a place on the map. "Your Majesty, I want this place." Everyone immediately looked over, and their expressions changed. The place that Lung Shiqi chose was the Western Wilderness County. Although the Western Wilderness County had the word wilderness, it was definitely not a barren land. On the contrary, it was the western border of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It was connected to the 6 countries of the western region and had been conducting trade all year round. In terms of richness, it was only slightly inferior to Donglin County. The officials were shocked because they felt that Lung Shiqi would not consider this place at all. Or rather, the Thunderblaze dynasty would never treat the Western Wilderness County as Lung Shiqi's fief. There was only one reason. This was the border. How could the border be given to a prince with a different surname? Previously, everyone was willing to accept Lung Shiqi as king because they thought that he wouldn't be able to do anything in his fief. However, if he raised a large number of troops in the Western Wilderness County and colluded with the 6 countries of the Western region or even the Starfall dynasty, then opened the border gates, the Thunderblaze dynasty would be caught off guard. The Western Wilderness County could not be given to him. In a blink of an eye, an official came out and said, "Head Steward Liu, you can choose to be king and fief. Other than the Western, Southern, and northern borders. You could choose any county. I think His Majesty has the same intention. That's right. Head Steward Liu, you should choose another place. It's not that we don't believe you, but this is an important border. We must be careful. The officials began to persuade Lung Shiqi. Mo Linwei waited until the last to speak. Can Head Steward Liu tell us why you chose the Western Wilderness County? It started in the Western Wilderness County. That's all. Lung Shiqi only said these few words and didn't want to explain more. This was a reason that couldn't be considered a reason. It definitely couldn't convince the officials. Everyone thought that Mo Linwei would refute. Unexpectedly, he said, I see. It seems that Head Steward Liu is a man of character. Your Majesty, I think that we can give the Western Wilderness County to Head Steward Liu. Wow. The hall was instantly filled with exclamations. It was impossible that Mo Xianghua didn't know the importance of the border. Then why did he still support Lung Shiqi? Could it be that he had been bought over by Lung Shiqi? Most of the people thought so. However, they remembered that Mo Xianghua had been a senior official for 3 dynasties. Although he wasn't completely clean, he had never married anyone. This didn't seem like his style. Mo Linhui continued, I know that everyone is worried. However, don't forget that the Western Wilderness County is guarded by the Azure Thunder Army. I don't think anyone would dare to invade. Moreover, with Head Steward Liu, the Western Wilderness County will be safe. Hearing this, the officials' eyes lit up, because Mo Linhui mentioned the Azure Thunder Army. This was the elite army of the Thunderfire dynasty guarding the border. They were even stronger than the Azure Thunder Army. Even if Lung Shiqi went to the Western Wilderness County, he would still be suppressed by the Azure Thunder Army. On the other hand, if Lung Shiqi chose to go to another county, he would basically be the local tyrant. However, in the Western Wilderness County, with the Azure Thunder Army suppressing him, he could only be a free and unfettered lord at most. Thinking about it this way, Lung Shiqi going to the Western Wilderness County seemed quite good. At that moment, no one in the hall objected. The soul clone struck while the iron was hot. He waved his hand and said, Since there are no objections, I have decided to give Liu Xingji the title of prince and the Western Wilderness County as his fief. Thank you, Your Majesty. Lung Shiqi bowed respectfully. Mo Linhui turned around and cupped his fists. Congratulations, Head Steward Liu. No, I should call you Western Wilderness King now. All the officials said in unison, Congratulations, Western Wilderness King. Chapter 805. Soon, the imperial edict was announced to the world. When Lung Shiqi returned to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard, many of his subordinates had already gathered at the Xingji Pavilion. They all knew that Lung Shiqi was about to leave the imperial capital for the Western Desolate Province. Interestingly, although he had acquiesced to give up his position as the commander of the Dark Thunder Guard, he did not step down as one of the 4 directors. In other words, he still had the power to supervise the 9 eastern counties. He was going to guard the western border and supervise the 9 eastern counties, so he still had a lot of power. So for his subordinates, they had to make a choice. Would they choose to stay in the imperial capital or follow him to the Western Desolate Province? Since these people could stay in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard, it was enough to prove their ability. Moreover, the imperial capital was full of high officials and nobles. The status of the Dark Thunder Guard was special. Although they were not very popular, they could still get a lot of benefits. In the beginning, they had spent a lot of effort to enter the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard. Naturally, some people were unwilling to leave so easily. But then again, following Lung Shiqi to the Western Desolate Province was not a bad choice. In the Western Desolate Province, their power might not be as great as now, but their future might be better. Because Lung Shiqi was too monstrous. These people of the Dark Thunder Guard watched Lung Shiqi grow up step by step. They were sure that his path would be longer. Following such a master, their future would be bright. So, these people began to have their own ideas. Lung Shiqi walked in. Everyone immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, Greetings, Head Steward Liu, greetings, Your Highness King of the Western Desolate Province. Don't be so polite. We are family. Get up. Lung Shiqi saw what they were thinking at a glance. He continued, "You all know about the matter, but I will go to the fief in a few days. Prepare well in these few days." Everyone knew that this was the time Lung Shiqi gave them to think. Of course, Lung Shiqi did have some things to deal with first. First of all, the candidates for the new 4 great chiefs. Mo Linhui had mentioned to his soul avatar a long time ago about the replacement of the 4 Dark Thunder Guards. However, at that time, there was a beast tide, so the matter was temporarily put aside. Now that the Miasma Mountain range had been cleared, and Lung Shiqi was about to leave the capital, he needed to properly manage the Dark Thunder Guards before he left. This was his foothold, and he couldn't afford to lose it. According to him, the one to be replaced among the 4 great general managers was General Manager Hai. He was already old, and it was time for him to abdicate. Originally, after every change of imperial power, at least 2 of the 4 chief stewards would be replaced. Coincidentally, Lung Shiqi was also newly appointed, so they could only replace Chief Steward Hai. Mo Linhui had once recommended a few people, but those people were all closely related to him, so he definitely couldn't use them. Lung Shiqi already had a candidate in mind, Quan Zhengji. This person had competed with Lung Shiqi for the position of one of the 4 great chiefs. He was too straightforward, so he was destined to fail. From Lung Shiqi's point of view, this kind of person was the most suitable for an important position, especially for an intelligence organization like the Dark Thunder Guards. Now that this matter had been decided, the next step was for his soul avatar to make the decision. Other than that, there was another person who should return, and that was Eunuch Gao. When Lei Haoge was still the crown prince, he had indirectly sent Eunuch Gao to the imperial tombs for 3 years. Now, only half of the 3 years had passed, and his authority had always been in the hands of a few deputy directors. If Lung Shiqi remained in the capital, those people naturally wouldn't dare to do anything. After he left, there would inevitably be some trouble. It was best to transfer Eunuch Gao back quickly. Even though Eunuch Gao had always been using Lung Shiqi to nurture him, if not for the many opportunities Eunuch Gao had given him, he wouldn't have been able to get to where he was today so easily. When Eunuch Gao returned, he could also help Lung Shiqi look after the 9 eastern prefectures. It was a win-win situation. These 2 things could be done by his soul avatar, and he still had to go find Empyrean Black Flame. This time, he had given up the opportunity to become the Dark Thunder Guard's commander, which could be considered as selling a great favor to Empyrean Black Flame. This favor had to be returned, but he didn't expect that before he went to find Empyrean Black Flame, the other party had already come. A wisp of black flame floated in front of Lung Shiqi, and Empyrean Black Flame's figure appeared. He was looking at Lung Shiqi with an inexplicable expression. "Greetings, great commander. You are already the king of the Western Wilderness, so there is no need to salute. I didn't expect you to choose to give up the Dark Thunder Guard's commander. You are not such a person," Empyrean Black Flame said doubtfully. Lung Shiqi smiled. "Great commander is right. I am indeed a very ambitious person, but the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. If I blindly pursue great power, I might end up burning myself." Empyrean Black Flame nodded in appreciation. "You are young and in the limelight, yet you can still maintain such a clear mind. Do you know how many people like you have died an unnatural death? In addition, the position of Dark Thunder Guard's commander is not a good one. I have too many unknown secrets of the Thunderflame dynasty, so many that you can't even imagine. You being able to leave the quagmire that is the imperial capital in time to manage a province is also a good choice. However, after you leave, it will be difficult for His Majesty to find someone to take over my position in a short period of time. I cannot take this favor for free. Take this." Empyrean Black Flame took out 2 jade slips. One of them contains all the information about the Western Wilderness Province, no matter how big or small. I believe it will be useful to you. As for the other one, it records the Thunder attribute, Divine Thunder of Annihilation. Not only does it have a specific location, but it also has the method to collect and refine it. Lung Shiqi didn't refuse, and took the 2 jade slips. Of these 2 things, one could help him control the Western Wilderness Province, and the other could greatly increase his strength. He had to admit that they were both things he wanted. It seemed that Empyrean Blackflame had come prepared. "Thank you, Commander. There's no need for such polite words. I have a premonition that even if you're far away in the Western Desolate Province, you won't remain silent. I want to see just how far you can go." Heavenly Sovereign He Yin left before his voice faded. Lung Shichi's eyes flashed. He then put away the 2 jade slips and continued to recuperate in seclusion. In the Blood Beast sect, a group of higher-ups gathered in front of a formation. The leader was the current sect master, Situ Huanshu. Their expressions were very solemn. A formation master said, "Sect master, we have tried our best to track the sovereign beast's aura, but we found that it is extremely far away. Based on the direction, it should be in the Thunderflame Dynasty." Thunderflame Dynasty. Situ Huanshu felt that it was very troublesome. Beside him, Siepingyu suddenly clapped his hands and said, "Sect master, the location indicated by the formation is the demonic Miasma mountain range that I went to a few years ago." Chapter 806. Of course, everyone in the Blood Beast sect knew about the demonic Miasma mountain range. Other than the extreme north, only the demonic Miasma mountain range had demonic beasts in the entire Starfall continent. Occasionally, they would make a trip to the demonic Miasma mountain range to capture demonic beasts. However, due to the distance, they couldn't go there easily unless there were special circumstances. For example, 9 Leaves Tribulation. When Siepingyu mentioned the demonic Miasma mountain range, Situ Huanshu asked, "You mean Zhuozhou is in the demonic Miasma mountain range?" "Sect master, I can't be sure. However, judging from the location, it's very likely." Siepingyu didn't give a definite answer. The matter of the revered beast is of great importance. We can't be careless. You've been to the demonic Miasma mountain range before, so I'll have to trouble you to make another trip. Siepingyu revealed a difficult expression and said hesitantly, "It's not a big deal. However, Sect Master, the new emperor of the Thunderfire Dynasty has just ascended the throne. This Lei Haoyin is very powerful. It won't be easy for us Heavenly Origin Stage cultivators to enter the Thunderfire Dynasty." Situ Huanshu narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment before saying, "It's not difficult. Follow me to the imperial city of the Northern Wei Dynasty. I believe they will be willing to help us." Northern Wei Dynasty, Imperial Palace. The current emperor of the Northern Wei Dynasty, Wei Xuandi, sat in his study with a worried expression. There were 2 items on the table in front of him. One of them was a broken blood-colored jade token, while the other was a memorial. The blood-colored jade token was an item that contained Zhuozhou's blood essence. The fact that the token was broken meant that Zhuozhou was dead. In order to recruit Zhuozhou, the Northern Wei Dynasty had paid a huge price to fake his death. Later on, Zhuozhou became the head of the Consecration Hall with his powerful strength and had done many things for the Northern Wei Dynasty. Not long ago, he said that he wanted to sneak into the Thunderfire Dynasty. At first, Wei Xuandi didn't take it to heart. Zhuozhou was a peak Heavenly Origin Stage cultivator. As long as it wasn't the Thunderfire Dynasty's old man Xiao, no one could stop him. However, he had miscalculated. Zhuozhou had died inexplicably. This was a huge loss for Wei Xuandi. His Northern Wei Dynasty's foundation was far inferior to the Starfall Dynasty and the Thunderfire Dynasty. Zhuozhou was already one of the few experts that they could send out. But now, he had actually fallen. Not only that, but the other report was a reprimand from the Thunderfire Dynasty. He even said that he would send a group of envoys over to Northern Wei to clarify the situation. The Northern Wei Empire was in the wrong in this matter, and Emperor Xuandi of Wei was having a headache. At this moment, someone came in and reported, "Your Majesty, the Blood Beast sect leader, Situ Huanshu, and Grand Elder, Siepingyu, have arrived." Wei Xuandi was stunned. His eyes flashed with a trace of uneasiness, but it was immediately replaced by a burst of brilliance. He smiled and said, please. Within the underworld, Lung Shiqi, Delta, Orgi, Yushu, and Ming Ming had gathered in the form of the Netherlamp. You've been crowned king. You want to go to the western desolate prefecture. Then how are you going to deal with the Dark Thunder Guards? When the three of them heard the news about Lung Shiqi, they all asked about it. Everyone thinks that I'm the most favored person in front of the Emperor, but in his heart, he has already begun to fear me. Since that's the case, it's better to leave as soon as possible. Lung Shiqi did not speak the truth. After all, the matter of his soul avatar possessing the Emperor was not something that could be spread. Delta Orgi nodded and said, "Even so, but how are you going to explain to the Blood Row Pavilion?" Yushu and Ming Ming also looked over. Lung Shiqi left just like that. Becoming a prince with a different surname was not bad. But this was not a good thing for the Blood Row Pavilion. If Lung Shiqi became the great commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, it could be said that the Blood Row Pavilion's plan was already half completed. When the Blood Row Pavilion rose up, as long as Lung Shiqi secretly manipulated it, who in the world would dare to go against him? This would be able to control more than half of the spirit cultivator sex, reducing most of the pressure on the Blood Row Pavilion. But now that Lung Shiqi gave up the position of great commander and became a prince, this was a huge opportunity for the Blood Row Pavilion. One could imagine that soon the upper echelons of the Blood Row Pavilion would come looking for them. However, Lung Shiqi smiled coldly. There's no need to explain to the Blood Row Pavilion. If they're smart, they can only continue to maintain their current relationship with me, because I already have enough qualifications to talk to them on equal terms. The number of unity of heaven and man experts under his command was already more than the Blood Row Pavilion, although he himself was not at the Sky Origin Realm. After absorbing the power of the Blood Beast Altar and the two demons, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. He could completely fight against a Sky Origin Realm expert. In addition, he had also received a part of the power of the Star Race's ruins. At this moment, he was only one step away from the Sky Origin Realm. Unless several Sky Origin Realm experts of the Blood Row Pavilion attacked at the same time, he was not afraid of anyone. This was the confidence that strength gave him. The Blood Row Pavilion had cultivated him in Delta Orgi, and at the same time, they were also using them. Both sides could be considered as using each other, and they had always maintained this relationship of interest. That was why Lung Shiqi said that the Blood Row Pavilion would not easily attack him. You must always remember that strength is the foundation of standing in this world. After I leave, you must do your best to improve your strength. Don't worry, Yushu said with a smile. Xiongming nodded in agreement. After that, the few of them discussed for a while and then dispersed, but Delta Orgi stayed. I can't help you more and more. During the last trip to the demonic Miasma Mountains, Delta Orgi could not do anything from the beginning to the end. Even though she knew that Lung Shiqi was in a dangerous place, she could not do anything. This matter had always been on her mind. How could Lung Shiqi not know what she was thinking? He said, "Don't think too much. I've already left you a backup plan. Next, you just need to show your talent and ability to your heart's content. I think it won't be long before you have a place in the 4 great punishment emissaries." He could not help but ask Delta Orgi more. He continued, "Did that Yun Xingxing you mentioned last time still come to bother you?" "Occasionally. There's already news from the Discipline Commission that Monarch Cloud Shuttle is about to abdicate. Yun Xingxing has been busy forming factions recently, so he doesn't have much time to bother me." "Is that so?" Lung Shiqi's killing intent slowly rose in his heart. Delta Orgi instantly saw through Lung Shiqi's thoughts. "I don't care what you want to do, but if you want to do it cleanly. Also, before you leave, give me some more essence blood." At the mention of essence blood, Lung Shiqi thought of the blood shadow secret technique that Delta Orgi had created. He wondered to what extent she had researched it. After the last battle, he had also lost a lot of essence blood. Fortunately, he had replenished it recently, so this was not a problem. Chapter 807. The next day, something big happened in the royal capital. Yun Xingxing, the personal disciple of the Discipline Commission's Monarch Cloud Shuttle, died in his room. Monarch Cloud Shuttle was a calm person, but this time he was furious. He swore to find a murderer and avenge his disciple. He was about to abdicate, so before he left, he had been paving the way for Yun Xingxing, hoping that he could take over his position. He had no children, so he loved this disciple very much. But now, Yun Xingxing was dead, and he died mysteriously. There were no wounds on Yun Xingxing's body, but there was no sign of life. It was as if his soul had been taken away. Monarch Cloud Shuttle did everything he could, but he couldn't find the cause of Yun Xingxing's death. He even invited Lord Black Flame and the Dark Thunder Guards, but it was all for naught. The one who did this was naturally Long Shiqi. He quietly snuck into Yun Xingxing's room and used the 6 paths of reincarnation to take away his soul. Long Shiqi wanted to kill Yun Xingxing not only because he wanted the Delta Orgy, but also because he would be a stumbling block for the Delta Orgy. He would have to get rid of him sooner or later. This matter caused a stir in the royal capital, and Long Shiqi was entertaining someone. He was Unigao. His soul doppelganger had already ordered Unigao to come back. Today, he had arrived at the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters. Unigao seemed to have changed a lot. His previous gloominess had faded a lot, and there was even a hint of kindness. Long Shiqi thought he was seeing things. Unigao laughed and said, "What? Don't you recognize me? Master, you have changed a little. Alas, the late emperor has passed away. I have my wish to keep the power of the 4 great chiefs. This is all thanks to you. Now, my status is not small, and I have no children by my side. What is there to be dissatisfied with? If I have to say what I want, it is only the heavens' origin realm." Long Shiqi inwardly agreed. Unigao's power and status had already reached the limit. Perhaps the time he spent guarding the mausoleum had allowed him to quietly observe everything. The most desirable thing in this world was power. If Unigao was a sky origin stage cultivator, he wouldn't have to spend so much effort to train his followers to protect his power. When you have enough power, authority will naturally follow. Unigao stretched out a finger, and there were 2 streams of light revolving around it. One was the underworld cold chi that Unigao was most proficient in. The other one surprised Long Shiqi. It was actually a wisp of Buddhist light. During my time in the Imperial Mausoleum, I understood many things. In my spare time, I've been thinking about how to break through to the sky origin stage. Unexpectedly, I found that the flower-pinching form that I got from you can coexist with the frigid hell chi. Even though they were clearly opposing forces, they could still rely on each other. This allowed the miscellany to find a path to the divine origin realm. Unfortunately, the flower-pinching form's level is too low. I have already studied it to the extreme. If I can learn something similar to the flower-pinching form's power, I may be able to make further progress in my lifetime. The more Long Shiqi listened, the more shocked he became. He never thought that the flower-pinching form that he casually took out would be the key to Unigao's breakthrough. However, he thought about it again. Unigao was a eunuch who cultivated the frigid hell chi. He didn't have any yang energy. The Buddhist light was the most yang energy. The harmony of yin and yang caused Unigao's temperament to change. At the same time, it was the key to his breakthrough. Thinking of this, Long Shiqi had an idea. Unigao was hinting that Long Shiqi didn't have any more Buddhist cultivation techniques on him by mentioning this in front of him. He had a lot of Buddhist techniques. If he gave Unigao a few and let him study them, he might be able to break through to the sky origin stage. However, he couldn't give them away for free. Right now, Long Shiqi was more powerful than Unigao. He didn't know what Unigao could give him in exchange. All of a sudden, a thought flashed through Long Shiqi's mind. He looked at Unigao, who had changed greatly, and asked tentatively, "Master, do you trust this disciple? Xingji, you have already surpassed your master. I don't have any evil intentions towards you. I don't have the ability to do that. Just tell me what you want." Long Shiqi looked straight at Unigao and said, "Then this disciple will speak frankly. To be honest, I do have some cultivation methods and spirit techniques that are similar to the flower grasping form. I call them Buddhist cultivation methods. I can give them all to you. If you can break through to the sky origin stage, it will be great for me. However, I have a condition. It's normal to have a condition. Tell me, what is the value of my old bones? Yunagao was half joking with Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi set up restrictions around them and said carefully, I want to invite you to join my organization called the Underworld. It's not a force. There are very few members, and we don't know each other's identities. Our goal is to take what we need and benefit each other. After I go to the West Desolate Province, I need you to help me look after the Dark Thundergar headquarters. It will be easier for us to go through the Underworld. That's right. Lung Shiqi wanted to invite Yunagao to join the Underworld. If it was before, he wouldn't even dare to think about it. However, with Lung Shiqi's improvement and Yunagao's change, he had this idea. First of all, the two of them had a purely beneficial relationship from the beginning. This kind of relationship couldn't be said to be loyal or absolute trust. However, they had worked together for a long time and knew each other well. Lung Shiqi believed that after Yunagao received benefits from the Underworld, he would only keep his mouth shut. In addition, since Yunagao had touched the threshold of the sky origin stage, it meant that his talent was very strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to touch the foot of the mountain. Therefore, Yunagao could also reach the level of the 10 Kings of Hell and help Lung Shiqi complete one of the conditions for the Underworld to upgrade. Finally, and also the most important thing for Lung Shiqi, after Yunagao received the inheritance of the Underworld and learned more Buddhist techniques, he had a great chance of breaking through to the Sky Origin Stage. Once he became a Sky Origin Stage expert, he could be promoted to the position of the Dark Thundergar Commander with just a decree from his soul avatar. Although Lung Shiqi gave up this position, he could indirectly control all the information in the world. It could be said to be killing many birds with one stone. Of course, all of this depended on Yunagao's thoughts. Yunagao's eyelids twitched. It seems that you have begun to cultivate various forces. I have no objections to joining the Underworld as long as there is a chance of breaking through to the Sky Origin Stage. Thank you for your help, Master. How about this disciple bring Master to the Underworld to take a look? Take a look. Yunagao was slightly stunned. He thought that the Underworld was just a name. He didn't expect it to be a place. Lung Shiqi smiled mysteriously. Don't resist, Master. After saying that, Lung Shiqi pulled Yunagao and teleported into the Underworld in the blink of an eye. After entering the Underworld, Yunagao was no different from those who had entered for the first time. He was shocked by the strange scene in the Underworld. Lung Shiqi looked into the distance. Sure enough, above the Underworld's 9 heavens, there was suddenly a black aura pouring down and enveloping Yunagao. The familiar yet strange voice resounded in the Underworld again. King of Hell. Chapter 808. Several hours later, Lung Shiqi and Yunagao had already left the Underworld, and Yunagao's expression still carried a hint of surprise. Master, you've obtained some inheritance. Why don't you hurry back and comprehend it? Yunagao took a deep look at Lung Shiqi, nodded, and prepared to leave. However, before he left, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something and asked, I've been looking through the latest information for the past 2 days and found something interesting. Do you still remember Lung Shiqi, who was ranked on the Flying Dragon list in the previous World First Spirit Cultivator Assembly? Hearing the name Lung Shiqi, a strange feeling flashed through Lung Shiqi's heart. He replied, I do remember him a little. What happened to him? I don't know what happened to him, but I accidentally discovered that many people were secretly inquiring about this person. If it was an ordinary spirit cultivator sect, it would be fine, but the 6 Direction spirit region was among them. Yunagao's tone was a little serious. 6 Directions spirit region. That was one of the 4 Saint spirit regions, the most powerful force in the Thunderfire dynasty. They even had a Tongxian realm expert like the 6 Directions spirit sovereign. Back then, It was the Six Directions spirit sovereign who brought many experts into the palace. Now, the Six Direction spirit region was inquiring about Long Shichi. What were they trying to do? Eunuch Gao guessed, "I'm worried that the Six Direction spirit region wants to use this Long Shichi to contact the overseas forces. The overseas spirit cultivator's cultivation is not high, but there are a few sky origin realm experts. If the overseas forces are roped in by the Six Direction spirit region, it will be a major threat to the dynasty." However, Long Shichi did not think that this was the goal of the Six Direction spirit region, because he knew that the Six Direction spirit region recognized the name Long Shichi. After Long Shichi returned to the Bloodcloth Pavilion from the Donglin County branch, he had a bet with the disciples of the Six Directions spirit region, and they won in the end. At that time, Long Shichi had not participated in the Bloodseed plan, so he used this name. Perhaps the people of the Lyoha spiritual region suddenly discovered that there was such a name on the Flying Dragon leaderboard and suspected that he was from the Bloodcloak Pavilion, so they went to inquire about it. Long Shichi thought so, but Eunuch Gao's next words made his heart sink. Not only the Six Direction spiritual region, but the mysterious Nether Temple is also investigating this person. The Netherworld Temple of the Yin and Yang Temples, one of the most mysterious forces on the Starfall continent. They were also inquiring about the Long Shichi. Is it finally here? Long Shichi thought to himself. Back then, when he had displayed the Ghost God Sword during the world's first Spirit Cultivator Conference, some people had guessed that he might have come from the Nether Temple. The reason why Long Shichi did this was firstly to get on the Flying Dragon list, and secondly, to lure out the Nether Temple. Now, it seemed that the other party had taken the bait. Long Shichi had never forgotten that he still had the bloodline of the Dark Shadow clan in his body, and the Dark Shadow clan was inextricably linked to the Nether Temple. After awakening the bloodline of the Star clan, he had obtained great benefits, so he coveted the bloodline of the Dark Shadow clan. Unfortunately, he did not know how to awaken the bloodline, nor did he know how to find the Nether Temple, so he could only use a more passive method. However, he was puzzled as to why he had not received any similar information. He asked, "Master, this is a serious matter. Why don't we report it to the commander?" "I have the same idea. If this matter was reported to the commander, Heavenly Master He Yin, then Heavenly Master He Yin would definitely report it to his soul avatar. Whether it was the Six Directions spiritual region or the Nether Temple, they were both thorns in the flesh of the Thunderblaze dynasty, so they had to be careful when dealing with them. In this way, Long Shichi could know the progress of this information at any time. After sending Eunuch Gao away, Long Shichi continued to recuperate. A few days later, he stood in front of the door of Xingji Pavilion and looked at the group of people in front of him with surprise. He did not expect that 70% of the people would be willing to follow him to the Western Desolate Province. One had to know that although Long Shichi was leaving, Xingji Pavilion still had to operate normally. At least 30% of the people were needed to support it. In other words, other than those who were essential, everyone was willing to follow him. Long Shichi did not expect himself to have such great appeal. These people had not been with him for long, the longest being He Fei Chun and Old Huang's group. In total, they had only been with him for 1 or 2 years. In fact, Long Shichi knew that the reason why they were willing to leave was not because they were loyal to him, but because of the benefits and future. He did not care how greedy his subordinates were, or rather, the more they liked benefits, the more they would work hard. With these people following him to the Western Desolate Province, no matter what he did, they would be very useful. Of course, he was happy to do so. Long Shichi and the group exchanged pleasantries for a while and then prepared to set off. They did not have any special mission, so they did not use the interdomain teleportation formation and could only walk slowly to the Western Desolate Province. Fortunately, it was not as slow as the previous diplomatic group. On the contrary, these people were all experts and had some storage space on them, so their speed was not slow. It was estimated that they would reach the Western Desolate Province in a little more than a month. These few days, the things that could be dealt with were more or less settled. The only thing left was to go to the Zhuge family and release a few experts. There was no other way. Lung Shiqi's injuries were not healed yet, so he did not feel at ease going to the Zhuge family like this. Moreover, he was in the limelight now. The entire Thunderfire dynasty was paying attention to him, so it was not good for him to sneak in. This matter could only wait for the limelight to pass. The journey was calm and peaceful. When they reached the Western Desolate province, they did not go to the Western Desolate city. Generally speaking, his mansion was located in the Western Desolate city, but Lung Shiqi did not choose this place. Instead, he had people build a mansion in a special place. That was the place with the densest spirit chi in the Western Desolate province, the Spirit Sealing Wonderland Valley. This place was very magical. The spirit chi within 1,000 miles of it was very thin. Only in the valley, the spirit chi was abnormally abundant, which was why it was named. Although the spirit chi was dense here, the strange thing was that there were no spirit cultivator sects established here. It was only because there were 2 spirit cultivators living in seclusion here. Spirit cultivators of the sky origin realm. These 2 were rogue cultivators. Since 100 years ago, they had been living in seclusion here. Naturally, no one dared to establish a sect here. However, Lung Shiqi had taken a liking to this place at first glance. His imperial residence wasn't just an imperial residence. He wanted to nurture it as a force. He must have an abundance of spiritual energy. On this day, Lung Shiqi brought many experts under his command to the spirit-sealing Wonderland Valley. Just as they approached, an old and deep voice came from afar. "Who are you?" Lung Shiqi cupped his fist towards the void and said, "I am Lu Xingji. I am here to be Senior's neighbor." Chapter 809. There were 2 thatch huts in the spirit-sealing Strange Valley. A hunchbacked old man and an old woman walked out of the 2 thatched huts. The hunchbacked old man looked out of the valley with an unnatural expression. Where did this brat come from? He doesn't know his limits, the old woman said unhappily. "Little Lotus, I'm afraid we have quite a bit of trouble this time. Look, there are more than a dozen unity of Heaven Realm cultivators outside. The young man leading them is even at the peak of the unity of Heaven Realm. I can see that his aura is extraordinary, so his identity must be extraordinary. I just don't know what their goal is," the old man analyzed. "Who cares what their goal is? If they know what's good for them, leave quickly. If not, we'll beat them until they know what's good for them." The old woman called Little Lotus did not seem to have a good temper. Outside the valley, Lung Shiqi saw that there was no movement inside. He lifted his foot and was about to walk in. Behind him, Rinny immediately shouted, "My lord, there are 2 Heaven Realm cultivators inside. We can't take the risk." "It's fine. I'll go and ask for some advice." Lung Shiqi casually waved his hand and moved his feet into the spirit-sealing Strange Valley. However, at that moment, a few blood-red lotus flowers descended from the sky. In the blink of an eye, the snow lotus petals danced. Each lotus petal contained an astonishing amount of blood fiend energy and heaven-earth essence energy. A show of strength? Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. He slashed out with the 1,000 illusion Dao sword in his hand. Countless sword chi constantly condensed. The sword chi condensed into sword threads. The threads intertwined like thousands of brilliant flowers blooming. The sky was filled with beautiful flowers. These flowers were not disorderly. Instead, they were arranged according to a strange pattern. He actually formed a sword array in an instant. In the next instant, the countless sword threads exploded with all kinds of strange sword chi. They swept across the 9 prefectures. There were many strange phenomena that dazzled the eyes. This was Lung Shiqi's ultimate sword array, sword chi, and illusion technique. Dazzling flowers. The snow lotuses were swept away by the dazzling flowers in an instant. They were utterly defeated. A surprised voice came from Adair. Lung Shiqi raised his head and saw an old woman floating in the air with a surprised expression on her face. Although she had casually launched that attack, she was a Sky Origin Stage cultivator after all. She had planned to use it to scare Lung Shiqi off, but had been easily neutralized. This kid is indeed not simple. However, the ferocious glint in the old woman's eyes grew even brighter. Her 5 fingers clawed downwards, and in an instant, a sea of blood appeared. Countless lotuses floated within the sea of blood, making it look extremely demonic. Roar! Several dragon roars suddenly resounded through the heavens and earth. Lung Shiqi's back was ablaze with flames as 9 golden fire dragons spiraled into the sky. The blazing aura filled the entire spirit-sealing magical valley. It burned the spiritual energy, the elemental energy of heaven and earth, the blood sea, everything, under the scorching heat of the crimson gold earth dragon flame. More than half of the sea of blood was instantly evaporated. The old woman frowned this time. She was just about to get serious, but she did not expect her sea of blood to be so easily neutralized. At this moment, an old man appeared beside her. He said, "That is the crimson gold earth dragon flame. It is very effective against your blood lotuses. Even my green bamboo sword can't deal with it. No matter how effective it is only at the unity of heaven and man stage." Old man Green Bamboo, are you afraid? Green Bamboo sighed. This guy knows that we are here, but he still came alone. This kind of person is either a fool or has enough strength. Now that you have tested him, why don't you listen to what he wants? No, I haven't tested him enough. If he can really take one of my attacks, then he is qualified to sit down and talk. As soon as the old woman finished speaking, the powerful aura of a Sky Origin Stage cultivator suddenly came crashing down. She was finally serious. The elemental energy of heaven and earth within a radius of several thousand feet was stirred up. There was even a howling wind and a faint trace of blood. The old woman formed a seal with both hands. Demonic blood lotuses bloomed one after another. They were extremely beautiful, but they were filled with killing intent. Countless blood lotuses condensed to form a fist-sized bead. Lung Shiqi's expression froze. He could feel an extremely powerful energy from a bead. Boom! Lung Shiqi instantly turned into a demon with 6 arms and 2 wings. He looked ferocious and terrifying. However, his body immediately shone with a blinding Buddhist light. One thought of evil, 1 year of Buddha. After being refined by the blood beasts and absorbing the power of the 2 demons, Lung Shiqi integrated the indestructible Vajra body into it. This was the indestructible, evil Buddha body. The old woman's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. She flicked her finger, and the blood-colored pearl trembled. Then, layers of lotus petals appeared. It was like a lotus flower that had just bloomed. Every time the lotus flower bloomed, heaven and earth would gently tremble. The lotus flower grew brighter and brighter, as if it was about to explode. Lung Shiqi was sure that if the lotus flower was allowed to explode, the entire Feng Ling Chi Valley would be razed to the ground. He clasped his hands together with a solemn expression. Immediately, a Buddhist light shone, and a Buddha Dharma idol stood behind him. Lung Shiqi slammed his palm down. The origin energy of heaven and earth solidified, and a Buddha palm appeared above the 9 heavens. At the same time, Buddhist lotuses appeared in the sky and floated continuously, purifying all the filth in the world. The 9 dragons appeared again and climbed on top of the Buddha Dharma idol. The Buddha palm was ignited with a layer of golden flames. Vairocana Dragon Flame Palm. The old woman had already put away all her contempt. Her heart was trembling. At this time, she already regarded Lung Shiqi as an opponent of the same level. However, just as the 2 of them were about to fight, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared between them. It was a fat spirit cultivator. As soon as he appeared, he shouted, "Stop! All of you stop! Little Chu, why are you here? How dare you attack me?" After Little Lotus recognized the person, he immediately burst out shouting. When Lung Shiqi saw that person, he immediately recognized him as his master, Wu Xiang. Of course, he could also be called Chu Hujing. He guessed that Wu Xiang had been waiting for him in the Western Desolate Province since he left the capital. When he entered the Western Desolate Province, he did not hide his whereabouts. Instead, he came to the Fengling Qi Valley openly. Naturally, Wu Xiang could find him here. Wu Xiang's purpose was none other than the Blood Road Pavilion. Lung Shiqi gave up the Dark Thunder Guard commander and left the capital. This was not good for the Blood Road Pavilion. Presumably, the Blood Road Pavilion also realized that they could no longer control Lung Shiqi, so they must have sent Wu Xiang to sound him out first. However, Lung Shiqi did not know that Wu Xiang was acquainted with these two Heaven Origin Stage cultivators. Wu Xiang shook his head and laughed. Senior Qingzhu, Senior Lotus, this is all a misunderstanding. This Lu Xingji is my disciple. Your disciple? Qingzhu and Red Lotus had a look of disbelief. Wu Xiang had broken through to the Heaven Origin Stage not long ago. Lung Shiqi was now at the peak of the unity of Heaven and Man realm. In other words, when Wu Xiang was at the unity of Heaven and Man realm, he already had a disciple at the same level. How is this possible? Chapter 8:10. Wu Xiang said, "It's true. We're family. We're all family." After saying that, he gave Lung Shiqi a meaningful look. Lung Shiqi understood and bowed to Wu Xiang. Disciple greets master. The word master was not to be used casually. Seeing Lung Shiqi really bowing, the two elders were skeptical. Wu Xiang quickly said, "Senior Red Lotus, please retract your technique. Why don't we sit down and talk?" The old woman hesitated. "All right, this kid is very strong. He's not weaker than those who just entered the Heaven Origin Stage. He's qualified." Then, she retracted her hand seal, and the terrifying blood lotus slowly dissipated. Lung Shiqi also retracted his Virokana dragon flame palm. Soon, the four of them gathered in the thatched hut in the valley. The two elders sat on one side. Lung Shiqi sat opposite them, and Wu Xiang sat on the other side. Red Lotus looked unhappy and did not seem to want to talk. The elder called Qingzhu coughed and said, "Little friend Lu, I'll be frank. Why did you come to the Spirit Sealing Valley?" "I've said it from the beginning. I want to be neighbors with the two elders." Lung Shiqi had his eyes on the Spirit Sealing Valley. He wanted to build the Western Baron Royal Residence here, so he would definitely offend the two Heaven Origin Stage cultivators. Originally, he wanted to use his strength and identity to intimidate them. He was not bragging. If he used his full strength, he might not be able to kill them, but he would definitely win. Now that Formless had interfered, and from the looks of it, they seemed to have some sort of relationship, things would be easier to handle. Lung Shiqi also changed his mind slightly. "Neighbor?" Qingzhu was puzzled. "You mean you've taken a fancy to the Spirit Sealing Wonderland?" "That's right. I want to build the Western Baron Royal Residence here." Lung Shiqi told them his plan and identity. The two elders had been through a lot, but they were still shocked when they heard Lung Shiqi's identity. "You're one of the four chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards of the Thunderfire Dynasty, and a prince with a different surname." Although they were rogue cultivators and didn't know much about the outside world, they were still able to recognize their identities. Lung Shiqi's current status was enough for him to look down on the Thunderflame Dynasty. Even in the eyes of the Heaven Origin region, he was not someone to be trifled with. What's more, Lung Shiqi's strength was extraordinary. Vaguely, he made the two elders feel a trace of fear. Of course, it was only a sliver. No matter how great the officials of the Thunderfire Dynasty were, they could not control them. The old woman immediately said with displeasure, "The two of us are used to living in this sealing spirit bizarre valley. We can't let you build a mansion here, let alone leave. Leave quickly. I won't hold it against you for little Chu's sake." Lung Shiqi's heart flashed coldly. When they fought just now, he could almost feel that this old woman's strength was slightly weaker than Zhong Zhanliang's group. On the other hand, the green bamboo elder didn't make a move, which made him a little confused. At this time, Wu transmitted his voice. "Disciple, this Red Lotus was from the Blood Lotus demonic sect in the Six-Path Demon realm. That green bamboo is a rogue cultivator. They are both at the Heaven Origin middle stage. While I was at the Unity of World stage, I also went into seclusion here for a period of time. Don't be fooled by Red Lotus's poisonous mouth. She's cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. Thanks to the two elders' help and guidance, I was able to break through to the Heaven Origin stage. However, it won't be easy for you to build a mansion here because they have no desires. No matter if you threaten or bribe them, it won't work. So that's how it is. No wonder Wu Xiang was at the Heaven Origin stage and still called the two elders. At the time, Long Shiqi felt it was a bit strange and thought that Wu Xiang had a close relationship with them. However, he still didn't believe that people would have no desires. The reason why they acted like this was because there was nothing worth drawing out their desires. Then, Long Shiqi took out a stone. It looked like a very ordinary stone. However, when he put the stone on the table, green bamboo, Red Lotus, and Wu Xiang all stared at the stone. In fact, it was just an ordinary stone. However, Long Shiqi had attached a trace of the law of earth to it. This, the aura of the law of heaven and earth. Red Lotus gasped. She didn't hide her emotions and exclaimed. Qing Zhu stood up, and a hint of excitement appeared on her face. As for Wu Xiang, his eyes moved back and forth between the stone and Long Shiqi. No one knew what he was thinking. Long Shiqi picked up the stone and said, Elders, I don't need to explain the use and value of this stone. I'm willing to exchange it for the Spirit Sealing Valley. What do you think? There weren't many Heaven Origin stage cultivators on the Falling Star continent. There were only a few hundred of them. Among them, only a very small number of people were passionate about pursuing power. What the rest of the people wanted the most was power. Every Heaven Origin stage cultivator wanted to find a way to break through to Tongxian stage. In other words, they wanted to understand the law of heaven and earth. However, there were very few people who could succeed. Most people didn't even have a clue when they reached the end of their lifespan. The stone in Long Shiqi's hand was like a lighthouse, a shortcut. Even if they didn't cultivate the law of earth, they could at least understand the law of heaven and earth. This was a huge step forward for them. How could the two elders not be moved? Green Bamboo looked at Long Shiqi and said, Young man, you haven't reached Heaven Origin stage yet. Perhaps you don't know the true value of this stone. Are you really willing to exchange it for the Spirit Sealing Valley? Although the Spirit Sealing Valley is full of spiritual energy, there are a few places in the West Baron Prefecture that aren't much worse than here. With your status, you can easily get it. You better think it through. This junior has already thought it through. I just don't know what the two seniors mean. The two old men looked at each other. The spiritual energy in the Sealing Spirit Wondrous Valley was of no use to them. They were only used to living here because they found it pleasing to the eye. However, the stone that Long Shiqi took out was a hope for them. A hope to break through to Tongxian stage. Who was more important, and who was more important? Red Lotus nodded and said, I didn't expect you to take out such a treasure. A small Spirit Sealing Valley can't compare to this. This old woman will take it away. I owe you a favor. With that, she waved her hand and put away the stone. Then, she left with Green Bamboo. Long Shiqi couldn't help but be stunned. This Red Lotus was really straightforward. Not only did he exchange a stone for the Spirit Sealing Valley, he also earned a favor from a Heaven Origin stage cultivator. This was a good deal. Then, he gave the order, and many spirit cultivators began to prepare to build the king's mansion. Wu Xiang's expression was solemn as he said, Disciple, you've made things very difficult for me this time. Chapter 811. Long Shiqi knew that Wu Xiang was not talking about the Sealing Spirit Strange Valley, but the Bloodcloth Pavilion. He could guess that the Bloodcloth Pavilion was dissatisfied with him. Disciple, I have no other intentions this time. I just want to ask you on behalf of the sect. What are your plans? Wu Xiang went straight to the point and asked without beating around the bush. Master, you should know me. No matter what I do, I have my own ideas. Long Shiqi explained, there are 3 reasons why I chose to leave the imperial capital this time. First, I am too famous in the Dark Thunder Guards, and even in the imperial capital. I don't know how many people already dislike me. This is not what worries me the most. More importantly, Lei Haoyan is starting to be wary of me. If I continue to stay in the imperial capital, I will only fall into endless power struggles. Although I am not afraid, it will only delay my cultivation. It will be better to withdraw in time and nurture his own forces here. Second, I left a foundation in the western desolate province, and there are many disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion here. Now that I am back, the Sealing Spirit Strange Valley is in the northern county. We can cultivate the disciples of the Bloodcloth Pavilion here and turn the Sealing Spirit Strange Valley into another Bloodcloth Pavilion. This is equivalent to leaving a way out for the sect. Even if the Bloodseed plan fails in the end, it will not be completely destroyed. At least there will still be a spark. As for the third, I'm just a chess piece in the Bloodseed plan. The others have not grown up yet, so there is no need to rush. After he finished speaking, Wu Xiang fell into deep thought. The reason Lung Shiqi did this was, of course, not as good as he said. He was doing this for himself. This Feng Ling Chi Valley was in the North County. He still had the title of North County's Great Supervisor. In the future, he planned to move the Dark Thunder Guards of the North County to the Western Wasteland King's Mansion and slowly run the King's Mansion. It might even become a force not weaker than the Bloodcloth Pavilion. Of course, that was in the future. Now that everything had settled down, he could do the thing he had been preparing for a long time. Even if these words can convince me, they might not be able to convince the Pavilion Master and the others. Master advises you to be more careful. Wu Xiang was silent for a while before he said with some worry. He knew very well that Lung Shiqi's words were mostly empty words. If he went back with these words, the higher-ups of the Blood Garment Pavilion would not be satisfied. Don't worry, I know what to do. Forget it, forget it. I know you're a person with a sense of propriety. I'll go back and report. After sending Wu Xiang away, Lung Shiqi began to build the palace. In addition to the people he brought, Yu Ruifeng, the inspector of the Western Baron Prefecture, also sent a large number of people over. It had only been 10 days or so, but a magnificent mansion had already begun to take shape. Furthermore, the Lung Shiqi had also sent out invitations, inviting all the powers in the West Desolation Province, including the Azure Thunder Army, the various cities, high officials and nobles, the Dark Thunder Guards, the Discipline Division, and various large and small spirit cultivator sects to be guests at the West Desolation Palace in a month's time. In fact, there was no need for him to invite them. There were countless people who wanted to visit him. When the Lung Shiqi was about to occupy the West Desolation Province, many people gathered in the West Desolation City to pay a visit to this prince with a different surname. But who would have thought that he did not go to the West Desolation City at all, but came to the Northern County's spirit-sealing Wonderland Valley? The news that there were 2 Sky Origin Stage experts living in seclusion here was not a big secret. Anyone with some intelligence channels knew about it. At first, they were very puzzled as to why Lung Shiqi would come here. The result shocked them greatly. Lung Shiqi had built a mansion in the spirit-sealing Wonderland Valley. Building a mansion was not a rare thing, but the key was, where were the 2 Sky Origin Stage experts? They were living in seclusion here, so how could they easily change places? But Lung Shiqi could occupy the spirit-sealing Wonderland Valley and invite guests, which meant that he had already dealt with the 2 Sky Origin Stage experts. No matter what method he used, just this matter alone was enough to shock many people. A month later, the West Desolation King's Mansion was officially built. The main style was majestic. Due to the lack of time, some details could not be filled in and could only be added slowly in the future. Lung Shiqi also brought a few array masters from the imperial capital. They had already set up a few arrays in several important places in the mansion. As for those large-scale and high-level arrays, they could not be set up in a short period of time. Right now, they were barely enough. On this day, spirit cultivators from all over the world gathered in the spirit-sealing Wonderland Valley. One by one, people with prominent identities arrived. The leaders of the few first-rate sects in the West Desolation Province were all present. Not a single city lord was missing. These people knew each other and naturally chatted with each other. The entire mansion was bustling with noise and excitement. At this time, someone shouted from outside, "Let's welcome the Azure Thunder Army's commander, Xiao Ba." Xiao Ba. Hearing this name, Everyone in the prince's mansion was stunned. The West Desolation Province was the western border of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The Azure Thunder Army was stationed here to guard the border. This was one of the trump cards of the Thunderblaze dynasty. Their commander, Xiahou Ba, was an expert at the peak of the Sky Origin realm. He had been overseeing the West Desolation Province for over 100 years, and no one dared to offend him. Therefore, Xiahou Ba had never left the border and had never participated in any grand events. But today, he actually personally came to the West Desolation King's mansion. Everyone looked in the direction of the gate, wanting to meet this legendary marshal. They saw a tall man dressed in tattered bee skin. His entire body exuded a wild aura as he walked over. In his hand was a jug of strong wine. Before he even got close, they could already smell the strong smell of wine. Lung Shiqi went up to welcome such an important person. "Commander Xiahou, it's an honor to meet you." Xiahou Ba raised his head and gulped down a large mouthful of wine. "All right, let's skip the formalities. I have other matters to discuss with you today. But since I'm here, I will abide by the rules. You go ahead and do what you need to do. We'll catch up after you're done." Lung Shiqi could not figure out Xiahou Ba's thoughts. But since he came to the West Desolation Province, he would have to deal with him sooner or later. "Commander Xiahou is indeed straightforward. Please come in." Then, he immediately sent people to gather all the information about Xiahou Ba. When almost everyone had arrived, he walked up to the high platform in the middle of the mansion. All the spirit cultivators in the mansion immediately quieted down. Lung Shiqi looked up and saw that there were over 10,000 people in the crowd. Among them, there were many powerful and prominent people. Rinyi took out the Imperial Edict and read it again. Then, whether it was the commander of the Scarlet Thunder Army, Xiahou Ba, or someone from a third-rate sect, they all cupped their hands and shouted in unison, "Greetings, Your Highness." Chapter 8:12. Lung Shiqi stretched out his hands and said indifferently, "Everyone is a guest from afar. Please take a seat." Everyone immediately sat down. Of course, not everyone had the qualifications to sit down. In fact, 70% of the spirit cultivators were still standing. They also wanted to know what Lung Shiqi wanted to do. He was the king of the Western Desolation, so it was normal for everyone to visit him. However, it was rare for Lung Shiqi to make such a big fuss. Now that the king's mansion had not been completed, he must have some plans for gathering everyone in such a hurry. In private, everyone was secretly guessing Lung Shiqi's purpose, but they were not certain. Lung Shiqi paused for a moment and said, "Today, I have invited everyone here to announce one thing." Everyone held their breaths, wanting to know what he would announce. "From today onwards, I am the king of the Western Desolation Province." Hearing this, most people were puzzled. Lung Shiqi was originally the king of the Western Desolation. Didn't he just announce the Imperial Edict? But the more everyone thought about it, the more they felt that there was something wrong with this sentence. Then, many people immediately shivered. Lung Shiqi said to become the king of the Western Desolation Province, not the king of the Western Desolation. King of the Western Desolation, this was an extremely high status. There were not many people in the world who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. But then again, the status of the prince was high, but he did not have any real power. You could have the power to cultivate your own power, but you could not command the big shots in the Western Desolation Province. For example, Xiahou Ba, the Dark Thunder Guards, and the people in charge of the Discipline Division. And Lung Shiqi's words just now were to completely control the entire Western Desolation Province. If it was just his own thoughts, then so be it. Who would be so ambitious? He actually dared to say such words in front of all the influential people in the West Desolate Prefecture. He was not afraid of provoking public anger, not afraid of being condemned in speech and writing, not afraid of being punished by His Majesty. Even if Lung Shiqi was also one of the 4 directors of the Dark Thunder Guards, he was in charge of the Eastern 9 counties, and his hands could not reach the Western Desolation Province. How audacious of him! The commander of the Azure Thunder Army, Xiahou Ba, was sitting right there. If he angered Lung Shiqi, he would not be kind to Lung Shiqi. Everyone quietly glanced at Xiaoba. Everyone knew that this person had a fiery temper. How could he be as insolent as Lung Shiqi? However, they saw that Xiaoba was drinking as if nothing had happened, as if he had not heard Lung Shiqi's words at all. Everyone was dumbfounded. He even thought that he had seen wrongly. This is Xiaoba. Lung Shiqi was also secretly observing Xiaoba. Among the people present, only Xiaoba was worthy of his attention. Xiaoba's reaction was beyond Lung Shiqi's expectations. The more Xiaoba reacted this way, the more suspicious Lung Shiqi became. He wondered what Xiaoba's purpose in coming to spirit-sealing Bazaar Valley was. Xiaoba was the strongest and had the highest status among all of them. Now that he pretended not to hear, who would say something? At this time, Yu Ruifeng, the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Wilderness Prefecture, stood up. The others thought that he would refute, but who would have thought that he would say, "Your Highness has been appointed to the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Naturally, you have to take over everything here. I don't care about others, but everyone in the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Wilderness Prefecture is at your disposal." As early as a month ago, Yunagao had already contacted Yu Ruifeng. He only told him that seeing Lung Shiqi was like seeing Eunuch Gao himself. No matter what Lung Shiqi did, he had to obey him. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Yu Ruifeng's decision made everyone feel like they had betrayed him. At this time, they realized that something was wrong. Just now, they subconsciously thought that no one here would yield to Lung Shiqi. There were even a few masters of the oneness of heaven and men realm who were eager to make a move. However, the situation did not develop in the direction they expected. First, Xiaoba did not care. Then, Yu Ruifeng surrendered. The rest of the people suddenly felt like they were scattered sand. Then, the major sects, families, and city lords of the northern county all stood up and said, "We are willing to follow your highness." The others could not help but widen their eyes. If the word follow spread to the imperial capital, it would be a serious crime. This cannot be blamed. The main reason was that Lung Shiqi's influence in the northern county was too great, or it could be said that it was too terrifying. Last time, when Lung Shiqi came to welcome the envoy, he had already bribed the major forces in the northern county. Now it came in handy. The only ones who did not speak were the Discipline Commission and the forces of the eastern, western, and southern counties. Until now, they still couldn't understand. Were those people who defected all crazy? When the people in the imperial capital and His Majesty knew about this, they would definitely be furious. At that time, all those who surrendered would not have a good ending. When Lung Shiqi saw that these people were still hesitating, his face immediately turned cold. I advise everyone to be more open-minded. You won't be at a disadvantage if you follow me. Otherwise, I'm afraid that this western desolate province will become a bloodbath. Unfortunately, I don't know how long it will take for the Western Wilderness County to return to its current prosperity. When everyone heard this, their hearts skipped a beat. Lung Shiqi dared to threaten them so blatantly. He really did not care about them, nor did he care about His Majesty. The king of the Western Wilderness is so powerful. Just when everyone did not know what to do, a figure broke through the air and said sarcastically, "Who is that? He must be an expert of the sky origin stage. I have some impression. He seems to be an expert of the Lioha spiritual region. Why is someone from the Lioha spiritual region here?" When Lung Shiqi saw the person, he narrowed his eyes and recognized him. This person was Elder Shao, who had brought the disciples of the Lioha spiritual region to the Blood Cloak Pavilion to participate in the gambling match. What was he doing here? It's only been a few years since we parted. I didn't expect you to be so famous. I wonder if the king of the Western Wilderness still recognizes me? Elder Shao asked with a cold smile. In the eyes of others, Elder Shao seemed to be an old friend of Lung Shiqi. However, these words were undoubtedly a threat to Lung Shiqi. In the world, the only people who knew his true identity, other than the Blood Cloak Pavilion, were those who had participated in the gambling match. However, Lung Shiqi's appearance had changed greatly after the gambling match. He even hid his identity and joined the Dark Thunder Guards. How did Elder Shao know that he was the king of the Western Wilderness? Lung Shiqi immediately thought of a possibility, and it was very likely. This news was leaked by the Blood Cloak Pavilion. When Six Directions Spirit Sovereign broke into the palace, Lung Shiqi had delayed him for a short period of time. Presumably, Six Directions Spirit Sovereign had already held a grudge against him. The Blood Cloak Pavilion leaked his identity to the Six Directions Spirit region because they wanted to use the Six Directions Spirit region to threaten him. Lung Shiqi thought to himself, "It seems that the words that Master brought back are useless." However, the Blood Cloak Pavilion is really bold. Aren't they afraid that the people of the Six Direction Spirit region will really expose my identity? The Six Direction Spirit region and the Blood Cloak Pavilion had secretly reached some kind of agreement. Therefore, it was almost impossible for the Six Direction Spirit region to expose Lung Shiqi's identity. However, they could use this information to threaten and control Lung Shiqi. Seeing that Lung Shiqi did not speak, Elder Shao snorted coldly and said, "We haven't seen each other for a long time. What should I call you now? The king of the Western Wilderness, Lu Xingji, or Lung Shiqi?" The crowd immediately buzzed with discussion. If Elder Shao was not speaking without thinking, then the king of the Western Wilderness's identity did not seem to be that simple. Lung Shiqi turned his head, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The crowd instantly fell silent. He suddenly smiled brightly and said, "Very well, this king wants to announce the second thing. From today onwards, my name is Lung Shiqi." Chapter 8:13. Inside the king's mansion, whether it was Lung Shiqi's subordinates or anyone else, they were all stunned. Elder Shao of the Six Directions spiritual region was the same. Other than Elder Shao, everyone else was baffled. The king of the Western Wilderness, one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards, had changed his name in front of so many people. Wasn't this too much of a joke? Of course, they soon realized that Elder Shao had suddenly appeared here and made the king of the Western Wilderness change his name without saying a word. There must be something fishy going on. Xiaoba put down the wine jar and looked at Lung Shiqi for a while before continuing to drink. Elder Shao, who was still flying in the air, opened his mouth. He had a lot of words that he wanted to say, but they were forcefully swallowed back. He thought that Lung Shiqi might change the topic shamelessly or directly attack him. But he never thought that Lung Shiqi would admit it in front of him. No, he didn't seem to admit anything. He only said that he changed his name. Although many people would be suspicious if he changed his name, it was much better than being pestered by the Six Directions spiritual region. At this moment, Elder Shao had to admit that Lung Shiqi was very shrewd and could also be said to be treacherous. He knew how to use the best method to solve problems. He simply changed his name in front of everyone. It could be said that the Six Directions spiritual region had something on him. This was because Elder Shao knew very well that he couldn't expose Lung Shiqi's identity. Therefore, Elder Shao felt a little embarrassed. His purpose was to beat Lung Shiqi and gain some benefits, but now he had no reason to do so. What should he do next? Lung Shiqi raised his head and smiled. Elder Shao is a guest from afar. Why don't we have a few drinks and catch up? Elder Shao said with a gloomy expression. Lung Shiqi, don't think you can get away with it. Elder Shao, I'm afraid you'll return empty-handed this time. What a pity. Lung Shiqi didn't give the other party any face. Elder Shao had a good temper, but at this moment, he still wanted to kill Lung Shiqi. In the end, he held back. Lung Shiqi was the key to the Blood Garment Pavilion's Blood Seed plan. Before the relationship between the Six Unity spiritual realm and the Blood Garment Pavilion broke off, he could not touch Lung Shiqi. However, he could avoid the death penalty, but he couldn't escape punishment. Elder Shao took a step forward, and a figure appeared behind him. That figure was like an ancient god, tearing apart the sky with its hands and crushing the earth with its feet. When it landed, the sky was filled with flashing lights. Everyone in the Long Mansion had no choice but to close their eyes. Even so, they still felt like they were being pierced by thousands of swords. Rinyu made a quick decision and activated the array in the palace. However, the array was newly built. How could it withstand the power of the sky origin stage? Even the slightest ripple was enough to shatter all the arrays in an instant. Lung Shiqi snorted in his heart. Elder Xiao should not have made a move in front of everyone, because it would leave an impression of arrogance in everyone's hearts. These people were all well-known figures in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Even if their strength was far inferior to the Six Unity Spiritual Realm, the Six Unity Spiritual Realm's reputation in the Western Wilderness Prefecture would be ruined. Lung Shiqi spread the Star Moon wings on his back and soared into the sky. For arms grew out of his back and formed a seal at the same time. Immediately, the wind and clouds surged, huge waves surged, raging flames surged, and the earth shook. The wind tiger tore open the sky. The water dragon soared into the sky. The fire phoenix spread its wings and circled, and the black tortoise broke out of the ground. Lung Shiqi formed a series of seals one after another. Suddenly, there was a mysterious rhythm between heaven and earth, and the origin energy of heaven and earth boiled. Then, the wind tiger, the water dragon, the fire phoenix, and the black tortoise gathered together, forming a formation that covered the sky. The Four Spirits Formation. As soon as the Four Spirits Formation appeared, the origin energy of heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of miles was instantly absorbed. Traces of an even more mysterious aura filled the air. That was the power of law. The Four Spirits Formation slowly pressed down. Before Elder Xiao could retract his shocked expression, the figure behind him had already dimmed a little. The divine light that filled the sky was completely extinguished, and not a single bit was left. "This is impossible," Elder Xiao shouted in horror. "How can you, who is in the unity of heaven and man realm, control such a powerful force?" He did not dare to believe it, because the power of the Four Spirits Formation had exceeded the range of what he could bear. In other words, Lung Shiqi was even stronger than him. He was an expert in the sky origin stage. Although he was only in the early stage of the sky origin stage, he was still in the sky origin stage. However, at this moment, Elder Xiao was helpless against the Four Spirits Formation. The result he was about to see was defeat. Elder Xiao naturally could not wait for death. He reached out and clenched his fist. Endless divine light burst out in the air, and a divine eye vaguely appeared. A ray of green light shot out from the divine eye. The green light looked very ordinary, but it contained an extremely terrifying amount of heaven and earth origin energy. The green light collided with the Four Spirits Formation, and a sudden sound came from the sky. Everyone only saw the Four Spirits Formation shake violently, but the green light disappeared without a trace. Elder Xiao's face was a little red. That was his last spiritual skill. Unless he burned his blood essence again, he would not be able to use any more power. He could also see that if he burned his blood essence, he still had some confidence in blocking the Four Spirits Formation. Facing a junior in the unity of heaven and man realm, he had to burn his blood essence to barely block a blow. From now on, he, Elder Xiao, would lose all face. How would he face others in the future? There were many experts among the spirit cultivators below. They could all see that Elder Xiao was in a great disadvantage. Lung Shiqi's strength had completely exceeded their imagination. He said that he wanted to be the king of the Western Desolate Province, so he did have the confidence. At this time, Lung Shiqi's forearms paused. The Four Spirits Formation that suppressed all things dissipated in the blink of an eye. He was not prepared to continue attacking, because he had already achieved what he wanted. Elder Xiao's expression froze, and then his chest felt as if there was a big rock pressing down on it. Even though he did not have to worry about how to block the Four Spirits Formation, Lung Shiqi's actions were like telling the world that he had spared Elder Xiao. A unity of heaven and man realm spared a sky origin realm. Elder Xiao held back a mouthful of blood and almost spat it out. This was not even as good as losing a battle. He could foresee that no matter where he went in the future, people would think of the humiliation of being spared by a unity of heaven and man realm cultivator. This would be a stain on his life, a shame for the rest of his life. Since Elder Shao is not willing to come and drink a few cups, then I won't send you off. Please go back and help this king pass a message. Don't use this little trick anymore. It's embarrassing. Lung Shiqi continued to stab. Elder Shao, who had a good temper, was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Good. He was so angry that he said 3 good words in a row. The king of the Western Desolate Province is so capable and awe-inspiring. My Lyoha spirit region will remember today's matter. Goodbye. After leaving behind a ruthless sentence, Elder Shao turned around and left, leaving behind many spirit cultivators who were still in a state of shock. Chapter 814. Even after Elder Shao had completely disappeared, the spirit cultivators in the palace still hadn't recovered. Lung Shiqi had actually defeated Elder Shao of the 6 Directions spiritual region. If it was in other realms, it wasn't particularly rare for the weak to defeat the strong, especially those spirit cultivators from the large sects who could occasionally do it. But that was the Sky Origin realm. It was a powerful existence that had already surpassed the 4 realms of heaven. How could this realm be crossed just because one wanted to? Moreover, Elder Shao was not a rogue cultivator. He was an expert from the 4 sacred spiritual regions. Whether it was his strength or cultivation method, he was naturally the best. Even so, he was still defeated by Lung Shiqi in 1 move. Just how strong was Lung Shiqi? Many people couldn't help but gasp. The only person present who was still clear-headed was the commander of the Azure Thunder Army, Xiaoba. At this moment, he was staring at Lung Shiqi with burning eyes, wishing that he could see through him. Everyone, there was an outsider who disturbed us just now. Now, I will give you one more chance. If you miss it, you will really miss it. Lung Shiqi's cold voice spread to every corner of the palace, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Immediately, 30 to 40% of the people knelt down to express their submission. In addition to those who had already submitted, the number of people who were willing to recognize Lung Shiqi as their king was now as high as 80%. The remaining 20% were people from a few first-rate sects and the Discipline Commission. The Discipline Commission was difficult to make. They were originally here to suppress the various spirit cultivators in the Western Desolate Province. If they all submitted to Lung Shiqi, then was there still a need for the Discipline Commission to exist? However, Lung Shiqi's ferocity was too strong. Not only was his strength extraordinary, but he also seemed to be somewhat disregarding the reaction of the imperial capital. It seemed that he had something to rely on, so the Discipline Commission also had the intention to bow their heads, but they really couldn't open their mouths. Lung Shiqi swept his gaze around and found a familiar face in the crowd of the Discipline Commission. He said, "Brother Wang, we haven't seen each other for a few years. I wonder if you still remember that you once owed me a favor." The person he was talking about was the Grand Commissioner of the Discipline Commission, Wang Tai. Lung Shiqi had spoken up for King Tai during the Monster Extermination Conference in the Wind and Thunder Watchtower, which earned him a favor. King Tai was called out. He looked at Lung Shiqi, who was standing high above, and felt a little absent-minded. When they were in the Wind and Thunder Tower, Wang Tai was in the Gang Spirit realm, and Lung Shiqi was in the Spiritual Aperture realm. However, he was still in the Gang Spirit realm, while Lung Shiqi had already reached the oneness of Heaven and Men realm. A Sky Origin Stage cultivator who could defeat a Sky Origin Stage cultivator. He smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect your highness to still remember me. My cultivation is low, and my words carry little weight. I don't know how to repay this favor. You should know very well what I want," Lung Shiqi said with a smile. King Tai's expression became even more bitter. He naturally knew that Lung Shiqi wanted him to persuade the people of the Discipline Commission to lower their heads. But he was not the person in charge of the Discipline Commission in the Western Wilderness Commandery, so he could not make the decision. He turned his head and glanced at Chao Qingyuan, the Discipline Commissioner beside him. Chao Qingyuan did not say anything, but gave him a look. King Tai immediately understood that Chao Qingyuan had already prepared to lower his head. At this moment, he only needed a way out, and King Tai was the way out. He spoke in a low voice, but the people around could hear him clearly. Lord Chao, I have an old friendship with His Highness, and he never does anything unprepared. Besides, everyone has seen his strength. We have no room to resist. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. We'd better. King Tai shut his mouth after he finished speaking. Instead, he transmitted his voice. My lord, let's lower our heads for the time being and muddle our way through. I believe that the imperial capital will make a move soon. So, even if something happens, it won't be our fault. Chao Qingyuan pretended to ponder, then half knelt on the ground and lowered his head deeply. The Discipline Suppression Commission had also submitted. Now, only a few first-class sects had not made a choice. Seeing that the Discipline Commission, which had been suppressing them, had surrendered, they felt a little better. We are willing to obey your highness. In the end, the people of those sects had no choice but to make a decision. At this moment, a large number of people in the prince's mansion had knelt down, which meant that the situation in the Western Desolation Prefecture had completely changed. Very good. I've prepared songs and dances for everyone. Drink to your heart's content, and don't stop until you're drunk. Lung Shiqi clapped his hands, and immediately, beautiful music started to play. Rows of beautiful female dancers started to dance gracefully, and the prince's mansion was instantly filled with singing and dancing. Xiaoba stretched his body and stood up. I'm tired of drinking this jar of wine. It's tasteless. I wonder if your highness has been here for a long time. Lung Shiqi's nose twitched. The smell of this jar of wine was very strong. Even he, who was in the unity of heaven and man realm, felt the smell of wine assailed his nostrils. He knew that Xiaoba was not here for the wine, but for the purpose of his visit. Although the prince's mansion has just been built, it still is good wine. Brother Xiahou, please follow me. Lung Shiqi led Xiaoba to the main hall of the prince's mansion. Brother Xiahou, please take a seat. He Lu, should I call you Lu Xingji or Lung Shiqi? Since I've said it in front of everyone, you can call me Lung Shiqi. He did not care that Xiaoba suddenly called him by his name. Xiaoba leaned back in his chair and said casually, Well, Lung Shiqi, Lung Shiqi, I've heard of you by chance. It's better to meet you in person than to hear about you. Let's not talk about other things first. Your current strength is probably comparable to the middle stage of the Sky Origin Realm. I admire you. It just so happens that I have a tricky problem in my hands. I need your highness's help. Finally, he got a point. Lung Shiqi looked puzzled. I'm still a junior in front of Brother Xiahou. If you have any orders, just say it. I'll do it as long as I can. Today, Xiaoba had given Lung Shiqi enough face from the beginning. Naturally, he would not be careless. The reason why he dared to agree was that he had his considerations. The most important thing was that Xiaoba did not know his strength when he came. In other words, Xiaoba originally planned to ask Lung Shiqi, who was in the unity of heaven and man stage, for help. Therefore, this problem should not be too troublesome. When Xiaoba saw that Lung Shiqi agreed so readily, he was first stunned, then he clapped his hands. Ha ha ha, Brother Lung is so forthright. You're definitely my friend. In fact, it's not a big problem. It's just that there's something in Bailu country that I've been coveting for a long time. Due to my identity, I can't easily leave the Western Wilderness Prefecture. However, Brother Lung is different. You're the king of the Western Wilderness. You can go to the 6 countries of the Western regions openly. They'll open their doors to welcome you. At this point, Lung Shiqi finally understood that Xiaoba wanted to borrow Lung Shiqi's hand to get something from Bailu country. This thing must be extraordinary if it could catch the eye of Xiaoba, who is at the peak of the Sky Origin Realm. May I ask what that thing is? Xiaoba said with a mysterious expression. It's an 8th rank martial art called 3 Talents Control Art. Chapter 815. Rank 8 technique. Lung Shiqi was puzzled. Although rank 8 techniques were rare, they were powerful enough to break through to the sky origin realm. However, Xiaoba was already at the peak of the sky origin realm. Rank 8 techniques should be useless to him. He must be preparing to break through to the Tongxian realm. What he needed should be a rank 9 technique. However, Lung Shiqi thought about it again. Xiaoba naturally knew about this. Since he valued the 3 talents imperial technique so much, he must have his own plans. This was not difficult for Lung Shiqi. At most, he could use the name of the king of the West to go to the 6 kingdoms of the West and get the technique. This might attract some suspicion, but so what? Without conclusive evidence, the power of the Bei Lu kingdom would not dare to question the king of the Thunder Flame dynasty. Before that, he thought it would be better to ask more clearly. Brother Xiaoho, can you tell me where the technique is and who has it? Xiaoba replied, there's a Huayu building in the Bei Lu kingdom. It is a force supported by the Bei Lu king. Its owner is called the Huayu Heavenly Master. He has a high prestige in that place. The main reason is that the Bei Lu kingdom is dry all year round. This Huayu Heavenly Master actually has the ability to summon wind and rain. In fact, some cultivators of the water element also have this ability. However, the water element in that place is very poor and it is not easy to do so. The reason is that this person has cultivated the 3 talents imperial technique. In addition, the people of the Bei Lu kingdom are somewhat uncivilized. Many people think that he is some kind of god. The Bei Lu king will take advantage of the opportunity to build a Huayu building and receive a large number of offerings every year. Alas, if that Huayu Heavenly Master is only a rank 1 rogue cultivator, even if he is from a spirit cultivator sect, I can directly snatch the technique. Unfortunately, he is now relying on the Bei Lu kingdom. It is inconvenient for me to make a move. I see that Brother Lung's body contains a domineering force. If you can get the 3 talents imperial technique, I can teach you a fist technique. Before Xiaoba finished speaking, his domineering aura suddenly leaked out. A fist intent intimidated the world. He did not move a single step, but there was a terrifying pressure of an overlord descending upon the world. The sky above the Wang Fu was suddenly covered in black clouds. Everyone felt as if their chests had been struck by a heavy hammer. Xiaoba had used his pair of iron fists to intimidate the 6 nations of the western regions for several decades. His self-created, dominating Empyrean fist had killed countless experts. As for Lung Shiqi, as long as he brought the 3 talents control technique, he would be able to learn a fist technique. In particular, the tyrant fist that he had comprehended not long ago coincided with Xiaoba's fist intent. It was like someone had sent him a pillow when he was about to doze off. Moreover, he had originally planned to go to the 6 kingdoms of the western region sometime later, so it was just a convenient thing to do. Lung Shiqi agreed without hesitation. I'll take it. However, there are still many things to prepare for in the mansion, so I can't go to Bei Lu kingdom for the time being. Therefore, I need Xiaoba to wait for a few more days. Haha, don't worry about it. Seeing Lung Shiqi agree, Xiaoba immediately laughed heartily. I won't be wrong. Brother Lung must be a man of his words. Then I'll wait for your good news. The Wang Fu of the Western Wasteland has just been built, and there are still many things to be done. I won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. Brother Xiaoho, please. Lung Shiqi saw Xiaoba off. Then he did not see anyone else, but went to the specially built secret chamber. He murmured, it's finally time to do that thing. At sunset, the people in the Wang Fu of the Western Wasteland had almost all left. After this day, the situation in the Western Wasteland Prefecture had changed. However, some people thought that it would not change for long, because the news that Lung Shiqi wanted to dominate the Western Wasteland Prefecture had quickly spread to the imperial capital. Everyone who received this news could not believe it at first, and then they were furious, especially those high-ranking courtiers. They were all flustered and exasperated. Soon, they spontaneously entered the palace to report this matter to the emperor. At the entrance of the palace, these people were all talking at once. What a Lu Xingji. He has just arrived in the Western Wasteland Prefecture, and he has already made such a big scene. He is really daring. That's why people say that he is young and frivolous. His Majesty was kind enough to give him the title of prince, but he really thinks too highly of himself. I was wondering why he agreed to leave the imperial capital so easily. It turns out that he already had a plan. However, he is still too naive. He wants to turn the Western Wasteland Prefecture into a state within a state. This is a big taboo for His Majesty. That's right. I think Lu Xingji will not be the king of the Western Wasteland for long. Don't call him Lu Xingji. He has already changed his name to Lung Shiqi. The king of the Western Wasteland, one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards, is also a person with a reputation. It is too casual to change his name just like that. I think there is something fishy about this. The Heavenly Origin Stage expert of the 6 Directions spiritual region has appeared. This means that the Lung Shiqi must be related to the 6 Directions spiritual region. Don't forget, the 6 Directions spiritual sovereign once brought people into the imperial palace. Perhaps the Lung Shiqi is their spy. Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi. Why does this name sound a little familiar? That's right. Isn't there a Lung Shiqi on the Flying Dragon leaderboard? Is it a coincidence? Or are they the same person? Just as everyone was feeling indignant, the palace doors opened. Mo Xianghua and 2 imperial family elders walked over. The 3 of them were the 3 Yuan Pavilion created by the Soul Clone. They held great authority. As soon as the 3 of them appeared, the others immediately shut their mouths. Mo Linhui said with a troubled expression, "I know why you're here. The information has already been sent to me. Regardless of whether it's Lu Xingji or Lung Shiqi, the implications of this matter are too great. His Majesty has to step in." "Then let's go and meet the Emperor," one of the officials said matter-of-factly. However, Mo Linhui sighed slightly. His Majesty has already gone into seclusion. He will not come out for the time being. Hearing this, all the officials were dumbfounded. His Majesty went into seclusion. What the hell was going on? They had heard of emperors being extravagant and indulging in debauchery. They had heard of emperors who did not do proper work. They had heard of emperors who loved beauties more than their country. However, they had never heard of an emperor going into seclusion. Actually, His Majesty has already gone into seclusion a few days ago. He has also discussed this matter with the 3 Yuan Pavilion. Mo Linhui explained, His Majesty has indeed gone into seclusion because he has something important to deal with. This matter concerns the lifeline of the Thunderfire dynasty. The Soul Clone had indeed gone into seclusion. This way, he could delay the Lung Shiqi's actions in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. As time passed, it would naturally be easier to deal with. The reason he could convince the 3 Yuan Pavilion was very simple. His final goal for going into seclusion this time was to set up restrictions on the Thunderfire Pearl again. Previously, when 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign attacked the palace, the Thunderfire dynasty had realized the drawbacks of the Thunderfire Pearl. Before the Soul Clone ascended to the throne, the shoddy ruler had instructed him to improve the restrictions on the Thunderfire Pearl as soon as possible. Ever since the Soul Clone ascended to the throne, he had been preparing for this matter. However, the restrictions on the Thunderfire Pearl itself were already very difficult to come into contact with. To set up the restrictions again required a lot of manpower and resources. Since the ascension to the throne, many formation masters had secretly gathered in the imperial capital. With Zhong Jinliang and Lan Ruo in the Imperial Hall of Worship as the leaders, they had been preparing in full swing. Until a few days ago, they had finally completed all the preparations and could begin. Only then did the Soul Clone decide to go into seclusion. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. No, it should be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. At this moment, the Soul Clone walked into the Dragon Vein. The place to remove and set up restrictions was here. The Thunderfire Pearl was too important to the Thunderfire dynasty. They had to be careful. However, no one knew that the Soul Clone had more than 1 Thunderfire Pearl. Instead, there were 2. Chapter 816. A few months later, Lung Shiqi's West Desolation King's mansion was finally completed. The time was mainly spent on setting up the array and building some secret rooms. He also did two things during this time. The first was to reorganize the various powers in the West Desolation province. Although they agreed last time at the king's mansion, they might not be so convinced in their hearts. So Lung Shiqi sent out a few Unity of Heaven Realm experts to govern the East, West, South, and North counties. At first, some people were still waiting for the reaction from the imperial capital. They felt that Lung Shiqi's good days would not last long. After more than a month, there was still no movement from the imperial capital. Only then did they start to panic and have no choice but to submit. The other thing was that Lung Shiqi used this time to sort out his own spirit cultivation Tao. He had settled in the Unity of Heaven realm for a period of time. It was time to prepare for breaking through to the Sky Origin realm. He vaguely had some clues, but he still needed to slowly explore. Right now, there were more important things to do. He had to make a trip to Zhu Lu country. Lung Shiqi had started to set up a few years ago. Now it was time to reel in the net. Now, he did not need to worry about the affairs of the king's mansion. After arranging everything, he announced that he was in seclusion and no one was to disturb him. As for himself, he quietly crossed the border and entered Zhu Lu country. In recent years, the biggest change in Zhu Lu country was the appearance of a special power, Buddhism. This power was clearly very loose. Many people did not need to have any talent to join. There was no lack of experts in the four realms of Heaven Realm. Those Buddhist disciples were also dressed very strangely. They all had big bald heads and mouthed Amitabha Buddha. They were very recognizable. At first, no one cared about this Buddhist sect. However, the Buddhist sect developed at an unimaginable speed. When people noticed it, they suddenly realized that the Buddhist sect's power was about to spread throughout the entire Zhu Lu country. In almost any city or town, you could see Buddhist disciples. They were still constantly preaching Buddhism. Those uneducated, ordinary people could easily become believers. So even though many people were not Buddhist disciples, they were believers of Buddhism. Some spirit cultivation sects gradually realized that something was wrong. Because many talented youths also joined Buddhism, these spirit cultivation sects could not bear it anymore. Thus, all over Zhu Lu country, there were cases of spirit cultivator sects joining forces to suppress the Buddhist sects. As a result, some Buddhist sect disciples even died. However, they didn't know that they had attracted a terrifying existence, master tutoring. Zhu Lu country was not big. After that incident, Master Tu Deng went to visit them one by one. He did not go to reason with them, but instead left behind a 3,000-foot-long, bottomless swastika Buddhist seal in front of every spirit cultivator sect. According to the memories of those who had witnessed the scene at that time, there was only the light of Buddha in the whole world at that time. They did not feel any discomfort when they were bathed in the light of Buddha. On the contrary, they felt quite comfortable. However, when the Buddhist light dissipated, they saw the terrifying swastika. There were plenty of Unity of Heaven Realm experts in Zhu Road Nation. They believed that even if they were 10 times stronger, they wouldn't be able to create such a big scene. Master Tuting must be at Sky Origin stage. When the news got out, all the sects in the Zhu Lu country were shocked. This Buddhist sect that came out of nowhere actually had a Sky Origin stage cultivator. Those sects that had killed Buddhist disciples were all trembling in fear. Some sealed their mountains and did not come out. Some went to apologize. After this incident, no one dared to provoke the Buddhist sect anymore. They developed even faster. At this moment, the disguised Lung Shiqi was sitting in a restaurant in a small town, inquiring about the Buddhist sect. He was not sure if Tuting had broken through to Sky Origin stage, but he was sure that Master Tu Deng's strength was definitely above Sky Origin stage. With his trump card in hand, Lung Shiqi had a bit more confidence in the matter of Zhu Lu country. However, he did not come to this town to find Tuting, but to find another person, Princess Ka Luo. Princess Ka Luo had established a force called 10,000 Gu cave not far away. It had grown quite well in the past 2 years and was already a second-rate sect. He had wanted to find them directly, but unexpectedly, 10,000 Gu Cave had a conflict with another sect, Heavenly Silkworm Palace. These two forces both cultivated Gu techniques, and Julu country was so small, there were not many places suitable for cultivating Gu worms. The two sides had already had several conflicts over some resources. In the end, they decided to have a fight in the town, and the loser would have to leave 100 miles away. Because of this, many people came to the town to watch the show. The fight was 3 days later, and the experts of 10,000 Gu Cave had already arrived in the town. Unfortunately, they did not see Princess Ka Luo. Lung Shiqi did not bother to look for her carefully. As long as he waited for a day or two, she would naturally appear. At night, Lung Shiqi sat quietly in a room of an inn. He opened his supercilious eyes and observed everything in the town. Soon, he found Princess Ka Luo's spiritual aura. To Lung Shiqi's surprise, Princess Ka Luo's cultivation was at Spirit Gang Realm Level 4. This cultivation speed was almost the same as Yushu and Ming Ming. It seems that Gu techniques are really suitable for her. I underestimated her talent before. Lung Shiqi thought to himself. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something which made his expression change. A trace of interest flashed in his eyes, and then he disappeared from the room like a ghost. On the other side, Princess Ka Luo, who was now known as Lady Gu, quietly walked into the town with a person. They carefully turned left and right and came to a remote small house. In front of the house, the person behind her knocked on the door rhythmically, and then a sneaky person led them in. After closing the door, the person smiled and said, "Lady Gu is willing to give me face. What an honor. Brother Warren, you are an elder of Celestial Silkworm Palace. It should be my honor that you are willing to see me." Princess Ka Luo said with a fake smile. Hee, Lady Gu is really good with words. I can't come out for too long, so let's keep it short. This is the information on the participants of our Heavenly Silkworm Hall, including their cultivation methods, spirit techniques, and some of their weaknesses. It turned out that Warren was actually betraying his own sect here. Princess Ka Luo was delighted. As long as she had this information, she would definitely win this fight. She reached out to take the information, but a voice sounded, "Princess Ka Luo, I don't think you need to use this method." "Who is it?" Princess Ka Luo was shocked, but she suddenly found that the two people beside her were motionless like statues. When she looked again, there was no trace of life in their eyes. Chapter 817. Princess Carol was shocked. The two people beside her were both in the spirit astral realm, but they were killed without a sound. Just how powerful was that person? But that voice sounded familiar. Lung Shiqi appeared with a smile. "Princess Carol, I'm here again." "So it's you." Princess Carol looked at him with a complicated expression. "What do you want this time?" Lung Shiqi shrugged. "That matter can begin." Hearing this, Princess Carol trembled. She abruptly raised her head and glared at Lung Shiqi with eyes filled with hatred. Ever since her father's death, she had been living in hatred every single day. Over the past few years, she had been enduring humiliation, hiding her identity to run her own forces, and cultivating with all her might. What was she doing this for? It was so that she could one day take back the throne that belonged to her. It could be said that this was the belief that she had persisted until now. Now that Lung Shiqi told her that she could begin, Princess Carol's heart was filled with boundless flames of revenge. She gritted her teeth. What should I do? Princess Carol was very clear about her own ability and the power in her hands. Although it was already a miracle that she could create a second-rate sect in a few years, it was still far from enough to fight against King Gus. And Lung Shiqi was her only hope. "Princess Carol, how are the arrangements for the 10,000 Gu Cave and the royal family's relatives?" Lung Shiqi asked first. These people were not the main force, but they were the foundation and power on the surface. Princess Ka Luo said, "Currently, there are already over 100 spirit cultivators in the 10,000 Gu Cave, and as for the clan, we have contacted more than 10 of them. They all have an extremely good relationship with my royal father and are willing to stand on my side during the uprising. Lung Shichi nodded. There were many disciples in the 10,000 Gu cave, but there weren't many in the four realms of heaven and man. Fortunately, he didn't count on them. He was only using 10,000 Gu cave to plant his own people inside. Otherwise, he would be interfering with Zhu Lu's royal family as an outsider. In that case, the Imperial Consecration Hall would not sit idly by. The clans that Princess Carol had convinced were also very important. That would give her a legitimate reason to ascend the throne in the future, and there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. When are you going to make your move? Princess Carol asked in a low voice. It was clear that she was somewhat impatient. Of course, I have to be fully prepared. It will take time for my men to gather here. I can take advantage of this time to settle all your matters. For example, your strength and the conflict with the Heavenly Silkworm Hall. There's no need to care about Heavenly Silkworm Palace. It doesn't matter anymore. That's not true. Lung Shichi chuckled. Princess Carol, there's no need to be in such a hurry. I'll help you build momentum before we start. At the very least, I'll let everyone know who you are and how talented and strong you are. This will accumulate a lot of prestige for you. You may not know the benefits of these things now, but you will in the future. Princess Carol took a deep breath and said, "You're right. I'm too impatient. I'll listen to your arrangements." Lung Shichi was a little surprised that she was so obedient. In his impression, Princess Carol had never been so easily persuaded. Perhaps this was growing up. In this case, Lung Shichi didn't have to worry too much. He said, "It's very simple." 3 days later, the competition between 10,000 Gu Cave and Heavenly Silkworm Hall will go on, as usual. And you have to defeat all your opponents with an unstoppable momentum. Princess Carol understood the intention of this, but she looked a little embarrassed. Of course I want to do this, but the Lord of Heavenly Silkworm Hall, Gout Da, is at the 6th level of Gang Spirit Realm. This person is about 50 years old. I don't know how many secret skills he has cultivated. His strength is probably no weaker than the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. If I could defeat this person easily, I wouldn't have to spend so much effort to bribe the spies of Heavenly Silkworm Hall. That's what I said just now. We have to solve the problem of your strength before that. Now I'll take you to a place. Don't resist, Lung Shichi said, and put his hand on Princess Carol's shoulder. Princess Carol subconsciously wanted to avoid it, but she didn't move. Then she felt dizzy and the scene in front of her changed rapidly. When she woke up, she had already come to a dark, gloomy place full of the chi of the netherworld. Mansion of the Dead. Where's this? Lung Shichi crossed his arms and said, "This is the headquarters of our organization Mansion of the Dead. You better not think about anything else. I have a big gift for you." Princess Carol didn't understand what Lung Shichi meant. While she was puzzled, she suddenly saw a majestic black chi descending from the sky above Mansion of the Dead and rushing toward her. She couldn't dodge in time and was swallowed by the black chi. Then a voice sounded, "King Wuguan." Lung Shichi raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect Princess Carol to be able to obtain the inheritance of the Yama Kings of the 10 palaces. If she was compared to people of the same age, she would be considered a rare genius in 100 years. Her cultivation was also on par with Xiongming and Yushu. However, the problem was that Yushu and Xiongming were at least a few years younger than Princess Carol. Don't underestimate these few years. True geniuses could undergo earth-shattering changes in these few years. For example, Yushu, if he was given a few more years, he would definitely be able to break through to the unity of heaven and man realm. In this respect, Princess Carol was indeed weaker than them. However, she still obtained the inheritance of the Yama Kings of the 10 palaces. Either this level of inheritance wasn't as difficult as Lung Shichi thought, or Princess Carol had potential that he didn't know about. However, Lung Shichi wasn't too concerned about this. He was more concerned about the fact that the underworld could finally level up again. Back in the imperial capital, Eunuch Gao had obtained the inheritance of the Yama Kings of the underworld when he joined. Now that Princess Carol had obtained the inheritance of King Wuwan, she had fulfilled the requirements for the underworld to level up. However, Lung Shiqi suddenly frowned. He remembered something. Princess Carol hadn't joined the underworld recently. Last time, when he came to welcome the ambassadors from various countries, he had invited Princess Carol into the underworld. However, at that time, he still didn't trust Princess Carol very much, so he didn't bring her into the underworld's secret realm. I wonder if this counts? Lung Shiqi thought as he opened the territory system interface. He took a closer look. Underworld territories current level, Tier 5. Underworld territories upgrade requirements. 1. Recruit 2 Yama Kings of the 10 Palaces, 0/2. 2. Collect a top-tier soul, 0 out of 1. 3. 160,000 system coins. Underworld has met the upgrade requirements. Territory upgrade requires 300 natural days. Territory cannot be used during this time. Upgrade? It could be upgraded. Lung Shiqi was overjoyed. He immediately chose yes. Chapter 8:18. It was naturally a good thing that the Mansion of the Dead could be upgraded, but Lung Shiqi could not wait for 300 days. He immediately exchanged for 30 basic territory upgrade cards. Basic territory upgrade card detected. It takes time to upgrade the territory. Do you want to upgrade it? Yes. Immediately, the Mansion of the Dead was immediately covered with a layer of gray fog. A divine thought suddenly broke into Lung Shiqi's mind. He seemed to see the entire Mansion of the Dead spreading in all directions, and the speed of the spread was unimaginably fast. After a few blinks of an eye, the signs of the spread finally disappeared. However, Lung Shiqi could not help but open his mouth wide. This was because the area of the Mansion of the Dead had expanded by thousands of times. In terms of area, it was probably larger than the territory of the Thunderfire dynasty. Some places inside had also undergone earth-shattering changes. For example, the underworld Beast Ridge where the monsters lived was even larger than the demonic Miasma mountain range. The road to the underworld seemed to have no end. In the center of the Mansion of the Dead, there was a peak that reached the 9th heaven. At the peak of the peak stood a hideous palace. With a thought, Lung Shiqi instantly arrived in front of the palace. Above the palace, there were 4 large words that flashed with a cold light. Fengdu Imperial Palace. This was the palace of the Emperor of Fengdu. This time, the upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead surprised Lung Shiqi. First of all, the area had become too large. Also, wasn't this palace his own palace? Lung Shiqi walked to the door of the big store. However, he was blocked by an invisible wall. He could not get close at all. Is it because I haven't received the inheritance of the Emperor of Fengdu? He secretly guessed. Although he had the title of the Emperor of Fengdu, he had not received the inheritance yet. Now that the Mansion of the Dead had been upgraded to rank 6, it was a pity that he still had not received the inheritance. The appearance of the Fengdu Imperial Palace gave Lung Shiqi a glimmer of hope. Since the palace had appeared, the inheritance should not be far away. Perhaps he could receive the inheritance the next time he upgraded. Thinking of upgrading, Lung Shiqi curiously opened the territory system to see the requirements for the next upgrade. Mansion of the Dead's current level, rank 6. Requirements for upgrading the Mansion of the Dead. 1. Accumulate 100,000 merit points, 0100000. 2. Collect 10 top-level souls, 0/10. 3. 320,000 system coins. Seeing these 3 conditions, Lung Shiqi frowned. To collect 10 top-level souls, he would have to kill 10 Sky Origin Stage cultivators. Sky Origin Stage cultivators were not easy to kill. First of all, how could you find so many of them? A top sect like the Blood Cloak Pavilion only had 6 Heaven Origin Stage cultivators. Among them, Wuxiang had only broken through recently. To do that, Lung Shiqi had to kill all the Sky Origin Stage cultivators from the Blood Row Pavilion and the Mountain Sea sect. Just thinking about it made him feel like he was dreaming. As for the amount of system coins required, It was within Lung Shiqi's expectations. Sure enough, it doubled again. 320,000 system coins could be considered a sky-high price. Even though he was now the king of the Western Wasteland and had control over countless resources, one should not forget that his imperial residence had just been built. To be able to build such a magnificent imperial residence with so many formations in such a short period of time, who knew how many resources it had consumed? Also, Lung Shiqi was now a big family with a large number of experts under him. He was constantly consuming resources. Therefore, it was difficult for him to take out 320,000 system coins. On the other hand, Lung Shiqi was more or less worried as well. Ever since he found out about the drawbacks of the system, he had almost never used the system because he did not want to be eroded by the system's power. When he had just upgraded the Mansion of the Dead, he had spent 160,000 system coins. The system energy had obviously increased, so he could not help but be vigilant. However, the upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead was still necessary. Therefore, Lung Shiqi could only decide to not use the system casually except for the Mansion of the Dead. Speaking of which, the first condition of the next upgrade of the Mansion of the Dead was a little confusing. Accumulate 100,000 merit points? What was merit points? How do you obtain merit points? He was completely clueless. At the very least, there should be an explanation or something. Lung Shiqi looked through the territory system and did not find any explanation. Instead, he found a new ability of the Mansion of the Dead. Teleport. As long as Lung Shiqi gave permission to a member of the Mansion of the Dead, then that person could teleport into the Mansion of the Dead at any time. Moreover, they could freely enter and exit the opening opened by others. Just like the Delta Orgi entering the Mansion of the Dead from the Imperial Capital opened a hole in the Imperial Capital, Lung Shiqi entering the Mansion of the Dead from the Zhu Road country was equivalent to opening a hole in the Zhu Road country. In this way, Lung Shiqi could go to the Imperial Capital at any time, and the Delta Orgi could directly come to the Zhu Road country. With this function, it meant that he could summon the people of the Mansion of the Dead in an instant. Lung Shiqi could not help but be stunned. At this moment, he thought of a lot of things. Originally, he planned to help Princess Carol first, and then wait for the people of the Mansion of the Dead to come here before making his move. Now that they could directly teleport here, it was much more convenient and saved a lot of time. In addition, Lung Shiqi had been worried that if the Delta Orgi disappeared for a long time, they might be suspected. Now, there was no such hidden danger. Then, he glanced at Princess Carol, who was still receiving the inheritance, and formed a few seals with his hands to form the illusion of the Emperor of Fengdu. Then, several Dharmakaya illusions appeared one after another. Yuan Yangming, you Ghost Emperor, Delta Orgi. Northern Wilderness Yao Yi, Ghost Emperor. Nine Li. King Qin Guang, Yushu. King Pingdeng, Xiongming. King Luanzhuan, Oziyu. And King Sitagarba, Tu Deng. He did not call Yunagao and Wuxiang. These two were the higher-ups of the Thunderblaze dynasty and the Blood Garment Pavilion, respectively. Although they would not reveal the secrets of the Mansion of the Dead, they could not participate in the matters of the Zhu Road country. This was the first time Lung Shiqi had summoned so many people at the same time. After they arrived at the Mansion of the Dead, they looked around. Delta Orgi, Yushu, and Xiongming naturally recognized each other. However, the others were very unfamiliar. Nine Li, Oziyu, and Tu Deng also looked at the others curiously. This was the first time they had seen the other members of the Mansion of the Dead. They knew in their hearts that the people who could be pulled into the Mansion of the Dead by Lung Shiqi were not ordinary people. However, they did not know the other party's true identity. This was quite interesting. Lung Shiqi stretched out his hand and said, "Let me introduce everyone. This is Yuan Yangming, you Ghost Emperor, and the one beside her is King Wuguan." He introduced everyone one by one. Finally, he pointed at Princess Carol and said, "This time, I called everyone here because the Mansion of the Dead is finally going to make a move. Each of you is the most trustworthy person, and the purpose of the Mansion of the Dead this time is to enter the Zhu Road country." Chapter 819. Delta Origi's illusions trembled slightly. Lung Shichi's words were truly shocking. Although Zhu Lu country was a small country, it was still stronger than some of the top sects. How could he become a master just like that? Zhu Lu country's strength was not to be underestimated, but it was still a country and not a sect. The difference between the two was still huge. Any of the top sects were still within the borders of the three great empires. They had to be restrained by the empires and did not have the ability to manage normal people. Zhu Lu country was different. Such a large place was their territory. All the spirit cultivators and normal people were their subjects. There were advantages and disadvantages to this, which was that Zhu Lu country's strength had to be spread out. There had to be experts overseeing the four borders, and every city had to have experts overseeing it. These people were all scattered across Zhu Lu country. In contrast, King City's strength was not as concentrated. Lung Shichi only had to deal with the experts in King City. Normal people would not have such thoughts because there were Sky Origin Stage experts overseeing the Royal Consecration Hall. However, Lung Shichi was not afraid. He had already started plotting against Zhu Lu country when he was still in the Spirit Aperture realm. It was also because of Princess Ka Luo that he did not want to draw out the experts from the Royal Consecration Hall. At this time, Lung Shichi looked at 9 Leave and 2 Deng. These two did not seem to have reached the 7th rank Great Demon or Sky Origin Stage. However, he was sure that their strength definitely surpassed normal Sky Origin Stage experts. Adding himself, even if the experts from the Royal Consecration Hall of Zhu Lu country made a move, it would not be a problem. Lung Shichi even thought that it would be good if they could make a move. At the same time, he could also increase the progress of Underworld's upgrade. According to what he knew, Zhu Lu country should have 3 or 4 Sky Origin Stage experts. Because they had not made a move for a long time, he could not confirm the exact number. Lung Shichi looked at the shocked people. The first one to react was 9 Leave. She laughed lightly. "You little brat, your guts are getting bigger and bigger. You even dare to plot against Zhu Lu country. How exciting." Delta Origi turned to look at 9 Leave. Based on the conversation between 9 Leave and Lung Shichi, it seemed that they were quite close. Master Tuding put his palms together and said, "Ba, this old monk will take action. I hope that this benefactor will refrain from killing." The way he spoke made everyone feel a little strange. They had never come into contact with the matters of Zhu Lu country and did not know about the appearance of Buddhism. Otherwise, just based on the words Ba, they could tell that Tu Deng was a Buddhist. "Don't worry, Grandmaster. Our goal is King Gus. As long as the others don't refuse, I won't be affected by karma," Lung Shichi said as he pointed at Princess Carol. "Also, I will not sit on Zhu Lu's seat. It will be her." Everyone looked at Princess Carol at the same time. At this time, the black gas around her was gradually dissipating. Presumably, the inheritance was about to end. A short moment later, Princess Carol opened her eyes. However, what she saw were several massive phantoms. Lung Shichi first introduced a few people to Princess Carol, and then said, "These are also members of the underworld. This time, they will help you take back the throne." Then, he formed a few seals and attached them to their bodies. "Now, you can teleport into the underworld at any time. This way, when you encounter danger, you can come in to take refuge. Moreover, you can leave through the exit of others." At this point, Yushu exclaimed, "That works too? Then we're invincible." Although Yushu's words were a little exaggerated, they were also what the others were thinking. For example, when they encountered a life-and-death crisis, they could instantly teleport into the underworld. Unless the opponent had the ability to tear space, they could only stare helplessly. "We are scheduled to start in 3 days. I will open the exit of Zhu Lu country. When the time comes, you can make the arrangements to teleport over." Among these people, Ozu was now helping Lung Shichi manage the Northern County Dark Thunder Guards and could leave at any time. There was no need to mention Tuding and Jili. The ones who were a little troublesome were Delta, Origi, Yushu, and Xiongming. They had complicated relationships in their respective forces and needed some time to disappear for a period of time. After arranging all of this, Lung Shiqi let everyone disperse first. Until he brought Princess Carol out of the underworld, she was still a little confused. The way she looked at Lung Shiqi had changed. In her eyes, Lung Shiqi was like a mysterious mystery that no one could see through in their lifetime. First of all, they had only met a few times, but every time they met, Lung Shiqi's cultivation realm was different. He also had a mysterious and terrifying secret realm like the underworld, and the members of it were all stronger than the last. Princess Carol could clearly feel that she was the weakest among all of them, especially Julie and Tudong. They gave her the feeling that she was facing an erupting volcano that could swallow her at any time. She had never thought that the underworld would be so strong. However, her heart immediately became restless. The stronger the underworld was, the more likely it was for her to take back the throne. Lung Shiqi saw the flames of hatred in Princess Carol's eyes and said, "Princess Carol, you have already received King Wuwan's inheritance. Even if it's only 3 days, it's enough for your strength to explosively increase. I believe that the battle between Thousand Gu Cave and Heavenly Silkworm Palace is over." Princess Carol clenched her fists. She felt the mysterious and powerful power in her body and sneered. "I can defeat Heavenly Silkworm Palace's Palace Master Gao De in one move." "Very good." Lung Shiqi clapped his hands and said, "Many people have specially come to watch this battle. It's a good opportunity. Contact a certain clan as soon as possible. After you win, you can openly reveal your identity in front of everyone. When the time comes, I will have a way to make everyone your supporters." "I understand." With that, Princess Carol left the room to make preparations. Lung Shiqi returned to the underworld and came to Underworld Beast Ridge, which was where the devil beasts stayed before. When he arrived, the first thing he saw was many devil beast corpses. Lung Shiqi wasn't surprised. He had already expected that some devil beasts couldn't adapt to the environment of the underworld, especially the 3rd and 4th ranked devil beasts, most of which were corroded to death by the nether chi. However, they didn't resent Lung Shiqi. If it wasn't for him, they would have died long ago. Seeing him come, the 6th ranked devil beasts immediately surrounded him. 6th ranked devil beasts were very adaptable, but now there were only 4 left. There were the land monkey, the green snake, the giant ape, and a strange bird. The first thing Lung Shiqi saw was Lu Ho, because he remembered that Lu Ho's fur was brownish yellow, but now it had darkened a lot. Some places had even turned black. He didn't think too much. The purpose of this trip was to borrow the power of these 4 6th ranked devil beasts. If he wanted to enter the Zhu Lu country, the Sky Origin Realm's high-end combat power was enough. The Spirit Astral Realms people could sweep across the same realm. Only the unity of Heaven and Man Realms people were still lacking. In order to be fully prepared, the land monkey and these devil beasts had to be used. Chapter 820. In addition to these demon beasts, Lung Shiqi also had 8 ghost slaves under his command. Among them, the Sword Ghost and the Beast Ghost both had the strength of unity of Heaven and Man, and the rest were comparable to Spirit Astral Realm. This was also a force that could not be ignored. Now that he had the strength of 10,000 Gu Cave, the members of Underworld, Demon Beasts, and Ghost Slaves, he could even shake the top sects. If he counted the spirit cultivators in the Western Wilderness King's Mansion, he could directly attack a top sect. 3 days later, the battle between 10,000 Gu Cave and Sky Silkworm Hall arrived as scheduled. On this day, many people crowded the town. Most of them were here to watch the show. A stone platform was built in the center of the town. At this time, Princess Carol and Sky Silkworm Hall Master Gao De were facing each other with swords drawn. Gao De was a bearded man, but his figure was a little short. He said with a fierce expression, "Our elder Warren disappeared 3 days ago. According to my investigation, his body was found in a remote hut. and someone told me that Madame 10,000 Goo seemed to have been nearby. What did you do to Warren? Princess Carol said contemptuously. What, you think I killed him? Who else could it be other than you? Gauda was furious when he saw Princess Carol's attitude. Cut the crap. Let's start the battle. Whoever has the bigger fist has the right to question, right? Princess Carol asked. Ha ha ha. Gauda was so angry that he laughed. He thought that his cultivation and strength were far stronger than his opponent, but Princess Carol said such words to his face, which made him feel that she did not know what was good for her. You are right. Today, I will let you know who has the bigger fist. Call your people up. Princess Carol shook her head gently and said, No need, I alone am enough. These words made Gauda's body stiffen. According to their previous agreement, each side would send 5 people to fight, and the side with more wins would win. But Princess Carol said that she alone was enough. She must be crazy. However, Gauda was also someone who had built a second-rate force. He immediately believed that Princess Carol was cheating. He glanced back and saw several gang spirit realm experts of Thousand Goo Cave standing below obediently, with no intention of fighting on the stage. That's strange. Gold found it very strange. At the same time, a trace of uneasiness arose in his heart. However, he immediately suppressed that uneasiness. In the face of strength, any schemes and tricks were meaningless. Mistress Wangu, I don't care what you're scheming. Bring it on. However, if you accidentally die by my hands, don't blame me for not showing mercy to you. Princess Carol opened and closed her eyes. Her pupils became abnormally black, as eye-catching as a pair of black gems. But when you looked over, it was as if there was a mysterious force pulling you into a deep whirlpool, making you unable to extricate yourself. Just like that, Gauda was absent-minded for a moment. His heart quivered, and he instantly bit the tip of his tongue to wake up. He felt a chill run down his spine. He had actually been reduced to such a wretched state by the other party's gaze. Die! Gauda clapped his hands, and hundreds of white goo worms gushed out of his sleeves. Those goo worms divided into 8 groups and encircled Princess Carol like spiders. Princess Carol's eyes became incomparably cold. She formed a seal with her hands, and the nether chi behind her surged. 5 ferocious ghost masks whizzed out. The onlookers felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Their bodies were shrouded in a strange chill. It was not cold, but an aura full of death. Some people immediately fainted on the spot. What kind of goo art is that? Gauda was shocked. He had never seen such a strange goo art. Of course, he did not know that this was no longer a goo art. Princess Carol stretched out her hand, and the 5 ghost masks immediately surrounded Gauda. Then, the ghost masks opened their bloody mouths and spat out clouds of different colors. In the blink of an eye, Gauda's white goo worms were all devoured. Ah! Gauda screamed. Those goo worms were all carefully cultivated by him. Not only did they cost him a lot of time, but they also absorbed some of his essence blood. Now that they were all killed in an instant, he suffered a considerable backlash. This was not the worst. What shocked him the most was Princess Carol's strength. He knew that Princess Carol had just broken through to the 4th level of the spirit astral realm not long ago. Her cultivation was 2 levels lower than his, and her strength could not compare to his. This was not because he was overconfident, but because goo art could indeed increase one's strength with time. After all, to nurture a precious goo worm that was suitable for oneself required time. But judging from the current situation, Princess Carol's strength was far above his. This shocked and puzzled Gold at the same time. If the other party had such strength, why would she need to fight with him? She could just come to his door and fight. He definitely did not expect that Princess Carol's strength would suddenly soar because she had obtained King Wuguan's inheritance. And as she comprehended more of the inheritance, there would be a period of explosive growth. Under Princess Carol's control, the 5 ghost masks rushed toward Gauda. Gauda was immediately scared out of his wits. He turned around and fled. But how could he escape from the ghost masks? After 2 breaths, The ghost mass caught up to him and tore him into pieces. Large amounts of blood and minced meat splattered on the spot. Some people could not stand such a horrifying scene and bent over to vomit. Some people who had experienced bloody battles were also pale. Some felt that something was wrong. Instead, their eyes shone with excitement. Everyone was in awe of the strong. Princess Carol's crushing of Gao Erda in one move shocked everyone. Some people even turned to the people of the Thousand Gu Cave and said they wanted to join. At this moment, Princess Carol threw away the hat and veil she had been wearing, revealing her true appearance. Wow, is this Lady Thousand Gu? She's so beautiful, so young. Her future is limitless. I always thought she was too ugly to show her face. Turns out she's too beautiful. Cries of surprise erupted in the town. Princess Carol stood upright on the stone platform and said in a crisp voice, "I am Lady Thousand Gu, but I also have another name, Princess Carol." Princess Carol? The daughter of the late king. She's still alive? If she really is Princess Carol, how did she become Lady Thousand Gu? Everyone's eyes widened. They were even more shocked than before. What everyone did not know was that there was a person floating thousands of meters above the town. That was Lung Shiqi. He smiled when he saw the scene below. He formed a seal with his hands, and 9-colored light flashed around him. Illusion Dream Glass. Chapter 821. In the small town, Princess Carol stood on the stone platform. She said with grief and indignation, "My father spent all his effort for Zhu Lu country. He never slacked off in his life, but in the end, he was harmed by a traitor. After my father died, my mother and I were hunted down. Only I was lucky enough to escape with my life. I built the 10,000 Gu cave to endure humiliation in order to take back everything that belongs to me. Are you willing to follow me?" After saying these words, Princess Carol had no confidence at all. She didn't think that she could incite these people with just these few words. However, Lung Shiqi had specifically told her to just say a few words. Princess Carol didn't know why, but she still did as she was told. She stood on the stage and saw that everyone below was a little silly, as if they were in a daze. Just when she was a little confused, everyone immediately burst into a burst of cheers. Then a large number of people knelt down at the same time and shouted, "We pledge our lives to follow Princess Carol." There weren't many people in the small town, including those who came to watch the show. There were only tens of thousands of people. Now that these people were all kneeling in front of Princess Carol, she didn't come back to her senses. She couldn't figure out, was she speaking too well or was she too charming? No matter what, it shouldn't be like this, right? However, Princess Carol immediately thought that it was very likely that Lung Shiqi had done something in the dark. She took a deep breath and raised her head slightly, revealing the power of a superior. "Get up." "Thank you, Your Highness." Everyone got up one after another and stood there obediently. Princess Carol glanced at the spirit cultivators of the heavenly silkworm palace. They all had fanatical expressions, including the spirit astral realm experts. What kind of method is this? Even the spirit astral realm could be easily changed. This is many times better than the mind control voodoo. Princess Carol was shocked, but there was no expression on her face. She lowered her head and said, "You are my vanguard and my backing. All spirit cultivators, get ready. Tomorrow, we will set off for Lemberg City." "Yes, Your Highness." Lemberg City was the closest city. The next step was to occupy this city and use it as a foundation. After the crowd dispersed, Princess Carol walked into an inn where Lung Shiqi was already waiting for her. "Your Highness, it's been a long time since you've been worshipped by thousands of people, right?" When Princess Carol was still a princess, she was often bowed to, but in recent years, she hadn't been able to enjoy this feeling. "I don't feel anything. I just want to ask a question. Tell me about it." With your ability, occupying Lemberg City will be a piece of cake, but this will definitely attract the attention of Gus. He might even send a combat army over. Princess Carol said worriedly, Even if we're not weak, if we want to fight against a combat army, we're bound to suffer heavy casualties. In my opinion, it's better to sneak into the royal city and find an opportunity to attack the palace. Lung Shiqi nodded seriously. Your Highness is very thoughtful. This is a better idea. You should have thought of it long ago. That's right, it might be easier to do that, but don't forget, Gus has been on the throne for several years. The officials and ordinary people of Zhu Road country have already accepted this king. And at this time, if you suddenly take away the throne, even if you have the support of the clan, it will cause the hearts of the people to be unstable, and there will even be more people who will rebel. We are now making a big fuss to let the world know of your existence. You're standing on the side of justice. When you sit on the throne, you can settle everything in the shortest time possible. Do you want an incomparably chaotic Zhu Road country or a stable Zhu Road country? Princess Carol pondered for a moment and said, so that's how it is. You have a long-term vision, but this Zhu Road country is not mine. Hearing this, Lung Shiqi smiled. Princess Carol is thinking too much. The Zhu Road country belongs to you, and no one will take it away. Your Highness should go and make the arrangements. We will welcome a fierce battle in Lenberg City. A day later, Princess Carol rushed to Lenberg City with the spirit cultivators in the small town. They had to be fast. They had to occupy Lenberg City before the news spread to the King's City. Although it was said to be occupation, in fact, there was only a very short battle here. That was Princess Carol displaying her might and killing the city lord of Lenberg City in 2 moves. Then, she easily took over the city lord's mansion and the city guards. Lung Shiqi used an illusion to completely control Lenberg City. Zhu Road Country Palace. How dare you? Suddenly, a loud shout came from the palace. King Gus flipped the dragon table in front of him and said angrily, Carol, a little girl actually dares to rebel. I thought she had already died in the Goo God Peak, but unexpectedly, she escaped with her life. What a pity, since she escaped and didn't know how to hide. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Men, immediately mobilize the Indian army to strangle the traitors in Lenberg City. Remember to bring back Carol's head. I want to choose it from the King City's gate and let the world know what happens to those who plot against us. Your Majesty, please calm down. At this time, a general stood out and said, Dia, what do you have to say? This Dia had always followed Gus. Back then, he had also experienced the Battle of the Goo God Peak. It could be said that he was one of Gus's most trusted people. Therefore, Gus suppressed the anger in his heart and let him speak. Your Majesty, although that girl Carol is despicable, since she dares to openly cause trouble, she must have something to rely on. Right now, we don't know anything about Lenberg City. We don't even know how many experts are by Carol's side. In my opinion, we can work on both sides. First, mobilize the Indian army, and at the same time, send people to scout the inside of Lenberg City. Just in case, we can also send a few experts to secretly follow. Well said. We'll do as you say. This time, you will be responsible for killing Carol. Gary, Bo Shi, you two assist ya. Gary and Bo, she were the 2 Unity of Heaven Realm experts that Gus had recruited. Back then, when Lung Shiqi caused havoc in the Zhu Road Country Palace, he had seen these 2 people. Yes, Your Majesty. The 3 received the order and withdrew. On the other hand, Diu was secretly delighted. He didn't underestimate Carol, but with him leading the Indian army, victory was in his hands. The great merit of exterminating the traitors would fall into his hands. The others also cast envious gazes over. Soon, Dia led an army of 10,000 and arrived at the city. Meanwhile, Princess Carol and the experts under her command were already standing on the city wall. Dia rode on his horse and saw Princess Carol's beautiful face. He shouted, Princess Carol, I haven't seen you for a few years. You become even more beautiful. What a pity, what a pity. This face will soon be hung above the King's City. Princess Carol coldly said, Stop talking nonsense. Since you're here today, then stay here forever. Chapter 822. Arrogant, Dea suddenly shouted. He had received information that although there were many spirit cultivators following Princess Carol in Lemberg City, there were not many experts among them. Most importantly, none of them were in the unity of heaven and man realm. Not only were there tens of thousands of Indian soldiers behind Dea, but there were also two in the unity of heaven and man realm. This was a battle without any suspense. Dea pulled out a sword, waved it, and shouted, "Kill!" Princess Carol waved her hand, and hundreds of people jumped down from the city wall. These people were all experts in the four realms of heaven and man. When Dea saw this, he secretly cursed Princess Carol for being extremely stupid. Not to mention that these people were unable to stop the Indian army. Princess Carol might be able to hold on for a while if she defended the city wall to the death. But now, she actually gave up the tall city wall and took the initiative to fight. She was simply courting death. As expected, you're still a little girl. I overestimated you before. Among the people who rushed out of the city wall, there were 4 people standing at the front. All 4 of them were wearing large cloaks and different devil masks. When Dea saw them, for some reason, a sense of fear rose in his heart. What the hell? Dea muttered in his heart, but he did not take it to heart. He immediately charged over with the army. The 4 people were Delta Orgi, Yushu, Xiongming, and Ozu. The 2 armies clashed, and Xiongming took the lead. A wave of black gas spread rapidly with him as the center. In an instant, it covered a radius of several miles and enveloped everyone. What the hell is that? I can't see anything. This black gas is strange. Not only can it block my vision, but it's also slowly eroding my spiritual power. The Indian army was instantly in chaos, and at this moment, a strange blood moon hung high in the sky. Behind Delta Orgi stood 3 humanoid blood shadows. One held a blade, one held a spear, and one drew a bow. Sensing it, the 3 blood shadows had power comparable to the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Immediately after, the Delta Orgi held a sinister bone sword in her hand, and the blood aura around her surged violently. The eyes of the nearby Indian soldiers immediately turned red, and they started to kill the people around them. The Delta Orgi shot out like a blood-red arrow, killing its way into the midst of the Indian army. The ordinary soldiers of the Indian army were also spirit cultivators, but their cultivation was basically at the spirit-gathering realm and the pure spirit realm. How could they stop the Delta Orgi? Dozens of people had lost their lives in her hands in a single exchange. The nearby Indian soldiers immediately surrounded her. Delta Orgi's 2 crimson shadows shielded her back like protectors, while the crimson shadow wielding a bow shot anyone who tried to sneak up on her. However, Gu San charged toward Dea with an indomitable will. At the same time, the phantom of a demon floated above Yushu's body. The demon held a blood blade in its hand and killed the Indian soldiers like a meat grinder. As for Ozu, he was much more graceful. With a light tap of his sword, rays of illusory sword chi shot out in all directions. The low-level Indian soldiers were still immersed in the illusion before they lost their lives. It was not much pain. The 4 of them had just made their move, and the Indian army had already lost hundreds of people. Moreover, everyone was terrified, and there were already signs of the army's morale being slackened. This was something that Dea had never thought of. The Indian army was one of the 3 strongest armies in the Zhulu country. Everyone was carefully selected and trained regularly, so it was impossible for them to be so weak. If they had to blame someone, they could only blame the Delta Orgi for being too terrifying, especially now that all the Indian soldiers were shrouded in the black gas of the netherworld. It was inevitable that they would feel fear in their hearts. The Delta Orgi and the others were constantly slaughtering others, and the screams in their ears never stopped. Therefore, the more than 9,000 Indian soldiers behind them had already thought of escaping before they even fought. Of course, it was impossible for them to escape. Dea's spiritual gang burst out and forced a part of the black gas to retreat. He hurriedly said, "Lord Gary, Lord Bo Shi, please make your move." The strength and threat of the Delta Orgi and the others were extremely great. If this continued, even if they took down Lemberg City, there would be a lot of losses. They had to be eliminated first. Gary clapped his hands, and immediately there was a loud bang. The black gas of the netherworld twisted and was already on the verge of collapse. Bo-Shi, who was beside him, raised a red giant axe. The giant axe smashed down as if it was splitting the sky and actually cut the black gas in half. The black gas dissipated like smoke, and the Indian army finally calmed down. Gary instantly locked onto the Delta Orgi who had been attacking this side. He sneered and said, "You're courting death." Immediately, he pointed out a finger, and an invisible finger force stirred the wind and pierced out. In his opinion, no matter how strong the Delta Orgi was, they were only in the gang spirit realm. The only outcome was death. However, at this moment, a sinister wind blew past, and even Gary, who was in the union of heaven and man realm, felt a chill down his spine. Immediately after, a shocking sword intent soared into the sky. A sinister sword aura appeared and tore the sky apart, directly cutting off Gary's finger force. The person who made the move was the ghost slave that the 1,000 illusion sword master had turned into, the sword ghost. Who is it? Gary was shocked. To be able to cut off his finger force, the other party's strength was probably above his. On the other side, Bo-Shi was also targeted by a strange aura. A translucent figure descended from the sky. As he waved his hand, ghostly aura surged and condensed into terrifying monsters that pounced towards Bo-Shi. That was the ghost slave that Zhuizhou had turned into after his death, the Beast Ghost. The Sword Ghost and the Beast Ghost immediately started fighting with Gary and Bo-Shi. Violent spiritual energy waves were released, and the Indian army was affected. As a result, hundreds of people died. Dea was stunned. Just now, the Delta Orgi were indeed very strong, but Dea had the army and was confident of victory. However, not only was he stunned now, he was also panicking. There were actually 2 people at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage hidden in Lemberg City. This was something that they did not find out before. Otherwise, he would not have killed his way over. Although he still had the Indian army, there were many low-level spirit cultivators on Princess Carol's side who had not made a move yet. In addition to the experts from the Delta Orgi, this originally easy battle suddenly became very troublesome. Princess Carol, who was on the city wall, was also very surprised when she saw the scene below. Lung Shiqi still had people at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage, which was something that even Princess Carol did not know about. Is he deliberately hiding it from me? However, Princess Carol also knew that now was not the time to think too much. The morale of the Indian army was low, and the 2 people at the Unity of Heaven and Man stage were entangled. This was the best time to counterattack. Everyone, listen to my orders. Kill your way out of the city. Bang! The city gates of Lemberg City were opened, and more than 1,000 low-level spirit cultivators swarmed out and attacked the Indian army. If it was in the past, such a motley crew was basically no match for the Indian army. However, the people from the Delta Orgi were unstoppable in the Indian army. Even if some of the spirit astral realm experts of the Indian army came over, they could not stop them. Dea's face was gloomy. Everything happened too quickly, so quickly that he was caught off guard. He even had a ridiculous thought in his mind. Failure. Chapter 823. Dea shook his head abruptly. How could he fail? Although he was in a bit of a mess now, he still had a huge advantage in terms of numbers and strength. He could win even if he had a fight to the death. All of a sudden, he was shrouded by a gust of murderous intent. He turned around and saw Delta Orgi drenched in blood crazily charging at him. Delta Orgi was surrounded by layers of bloody mist. That was the bloody chi left behind by the people she had killed. It had only been a while, but hundreds of people had died in her hands. Dea's heart skipped a beat. Stop her! Stop her for me! The two gang spirit realm experts on his left and right rushed at Delta Orgi. However, the blood moon hanging high in the sky suddenly trembled and then fell down with a terrifying whistling sound. Dense bloody chi covered the sky and earth. Delta Orgi leaped high and pinched a seal. At this moment, she seemed to have become one with the blood moon. The bone sword in her hand slashed out, and a crescent sword light tore through the void. This power had far exceeded the scope of gang spirit realm and attracted the attention of countless people. The two gang spirit realm experts were immediately scared out of their wits. They turned around and fled without any hesitation. Unfortunately, Delta Orgi's bow-wielding blood shadow suddenly shot thousands of arrows at the same time. Hundreds of blood-red arrows fell from the sky. These blood arrows were not very powerful, but they happened to block the two people's path at this moment. The two people were terrified and immediately called for help. Lord Dea, help. Help? Unfortunately, before they could finish their words, they were cut into two by the blood moon. Dea sucked in a breath of cold air. Both of them were at the middle stage of gang spirit realm. Yet they were killed in an instant. He looked at Delta Orgi with fear in his eyes. Where did this expert come from? Seeing Delta Orgi continue to charge at him, Dea's heart was finally in a mess. There were other masters of gang spirit realm in the Indian army, but they had been entangled by Yushu, Princess Carol, and others. After a few moves, they were either killed or injured. Everyone could hardly protect themselves, so no one could help him. Gary and Bossy were also being suppressed by Sword Demon and Beast Demon. Had it not been for the fact that Sword Demon and Beast Demon did not possess a physical body, which limited their strength, the two men would have already been severely injured. As for the ordinary Indian soldiers, they were just sending themselves to their deaths. There was no way they could stop the Delta Orgi. Dea suddenly realized that he was standing at the edge of the gates of hell. If he was really killed, the Indian army would be like a group of dragons without a leader, and the morale of the army would definitely drop. They might even be defeated by the 1,000+ men. Dea didn't even dare to dream of such a situation. However, this was the reality. The change was too fast. In just a short moment, he had gone from having victory in his grasp to almost running away. He knew that if he escaped, he would be severely punished by King Gus. However, the Delta Orgi were too strong, and he had no confidence in fighting them. If he didn't run, he might die. How was he supposed to choose between being punished and dying? Dea quickly made his choice. Escape. All of you, go and surround her. Dea ordered the dozen or so spirit aperture realm cultivators around him in a panic. No matter how useless these people were, they would at least be able to stall for some time. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he actually ignored his status and the Indian army and urged his horse to flee. Gary was the first to see this, and he immediately scolded, Dea, you actually dare to run away. This is a crime punishable by death. Cowardly rat. Bossy was also gnashing his teeth in hatred. The two of them were being beaten up by Sword Demon and Beast Demon to the point where they could not even retaliate. They had originally pinned their hopes on Dea to quickly exterminate Princess Carol, but Dea had actually run away first. Dea was the leader of this operation to encircle and annihilate Princess Carol. Now that their leader had run away, what were they still fighting for? Thus, Gary and Bossy both had the same thought. Since Dea was the one who ran away first, they could push the blame onto Dea even if they were to be blamed for it. If they wanted to leave now, they could still do so at any time. But if they were to continue fighting, there was no telling what would happen. The two men secretly exchanged glances and came to a decision. If they did not leave now, when would they? Following which, the two men suddenly burst forth and forced Sword Demon and Beast Demon to retreat before quickly leaving the battlefield. Following the escape of the three men, the remaining Indian soldiers were completely dumbfounded. Their commander had run away, and their two strongest men at the Unity of Heaven realm had also run away. Did that not mean that they could only be slaughtered? They had been abandoned. Yushu and the others could casually slaughter dozens of people with a single strike. In the eyes of the Indian soldiers, they were no different from demons. At this time, Princess Carol had already led a group of spirit cultivators to kill their way over. There were less than 2,000 spirit cultivators here, but this caused the remaining 9,000 over Indian soldiers to feel despair. Immediately, there were quite a number of people who threw away their helmets and armor and became deserters. As the saying goes, a defeated army is like a landslide. The Indian soldiers instantly panicked and did not know where to go, turning into a pile of scattered sand. Run! Ghosts, they're ghosts. You are soldiers. Even if you die, you will die on the battlefield. Desertion is a disgrace. There were also people who shouted themselves hoarse, unwilling to escape. Don't block me, scram. However, this person was directly pushed aside. The Indian army fell into chaos. It could be said that they were utterly defeated. Princess Carol frowned when she saw the Indian army like this. Although her side had taken them by surprise, the number of Indian soldiers was still here. Moreover, they were all wearing armor and were well equipped. Just this point alone was not something that Princess Carol's soldiers could compare to. In addition, although the Delta Orgi's strength was extraordinary, like a tiger in a flock of sheep, their violent attacks could not last for long. As long as the Indian army stabilized their footing and set up their military formation, as long as Lung Shichi did not reveal any other trump cards, the Indian army still had hope of winning. But now, with Dia and the other two escaping, the Indian army had become like this. To be honest, this made Princess Carol somewhat disappointed. Her Zhulu country's elite army, the Indian army, was so weak. She secretly made up her mind that when she became the king, she would definitely rectify it. However, at this moment, Princess Carol needed to end this battle as soon as possible. Because no matter who it was, both sides were citizens of Zhulu country, her citizens. Princess Carol gathered her spiritual energy and shouted, "Everyone, listen up. We are all citizens of Zhulu country. There is no need to fight to the death. Now that Dia has abandoned you, as long as you surrender to me, you can keep your lives." The people behind her shouted in unison, "Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed." Many people in the Indian army were immediately moved. If there was hope of living, who would want to die? However, some people were still hesitating. If they became deserters, they could just hide. But if they became rebels, they would be hunted down by Zhulu country for the rest of their lives. If Princess Carol failed in the end, they would still die. Just as they were hesitating, an undetectable spiritual energy quietly invaded their minds. In their eyes, Princess Carol was a high and mighty deity that could not be offended. Everyone was prostrating before her. "I am willing to surrender. Greetings, Princess Carol." Chapter 824. Boom! In the palace of Zhulu country, a miserable body was blasted out, leaving a deep trail of blood along the way. That person was Dea. Dea was sent flying by King Gus with a slap. As the commander-in-chief, you actually fled at the last minute and let nearly 10,000 Indian soldiers surrender to the traitor Carol. You still have the guts to come and see me. If it weren't for our old friendship, I would have torn you into pieces right now. King Gus roared. In fact, he was usually a scheming person and had never been so irritable. It was Dea who had provoked him this time. This trip to Lemberg City was simply a suicide mission. It was supposed to be an extermination mission, but in the end, he sent a large number of Indian soldiers to Princess Carol. Originally, Princess Carol was just a small matter in Gus's eyes. Now, with the Indian army, Princess Carol had the qualifications to challenge Gus. Although Princess Carol only had 10,000 men under her command, Zhulu country still had tens of thousands of soldiers. On the surface, it looked like they had a great advantage. But don't forget, Zhulu country was a country after all. It was surrounded by Bailu country and Great Moon country, who had been eyeing it covetously. At this time, the news of Princess Carol's rebellion should have spread to them. If Gus mobilized a large number of troops to eliminate Princess Carol, Bailu Country and Great Moon Country would definitely not turn a blind eye. They would hit her when she was down. Therefore, Princess Carol could already threaten the safety of Zhu Country. Daya still had a few breaths left. He got up with difficulty and knelt on the ground to explain, "Your Majesty, I have been defeated and fled. I deserve to die. No matter how your Majesty punishes me, I will have no complaints. But the biggest reason why I lost this battle was that the intelligence was inaccurate. Carol has several spirit astral realm experts under her command. Their strength is not inferior to the union of heaven and man realm. They killed their way in as if they were invading a no-man's land. None of us could stop them. In addition, Carol actually hid 2 union of heaven and man realm experts. Lord Gary and Lord Bushy are no match for them. Both of you can bear witness to this. This humble subject is not lying at all." "Really?" King Gus looked at Gary and asked. Gary said in a deep voice, "Daya is telling the truth." Crack, crack. King Gus immediately crushed his throne. Now he finally knew where Princess Carol's confidence came from. It turned out that she had hidden it so deeply. He had to find a way to deal with Princess Carol as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the other party's forces continued to expand, there would be no leeway left. King Gus hatefully said, "Daya, in consideration of your years of loyalty, I'll spare your life for now. In the future, you'll be the vanguard in our crusade against Kaler." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Thank you for your kindness." Daya was so happy that he could keep his life. "Not good, Your Majesty. Something big has happened." At this time, a group of people ran in from outside the palace. They were the officials in charge of Zhu's intelligence. Daya had not seen these people for a long time. Back then, it was because of these people's wrong information that he had made such a huge mistake and almost lost his life. Thus, he sneered impudent. "How could something happen to Your Majesty's health? How dare you make such a ruckus in the palace?" However, these people did not pay him any attention. One of them took out a dozen reports in a panic and said with a trembling voice, Your Majesty, a large number of people supporting Kaler have appeared in the various cities. They are constantly spreading the news. Right now, Kaler's influence is unprecedentedly strong. Your Majesty, you are about to lose the hearts of the people." King Gus's mind was in a daze. Soon after, he muttered, "Impossible, absolutely impossible. Kaler has just started her rebellion a few days ago. How could she have so many supporters? It's the Buddhist sect. The entire Buddhist sect has already submitted to Kaler. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. But suddenly, we discovered that the Buddhist sect believers have spread throughout Zhu. Moreover, those believers are spreading like a plague. I'm afraid it won't be long before the world only knows about Kaler and not Your Majesty." The Buddhist sect. King Gus was even more dazed. He naturally knew about the Buddhist sect, especially after Tu Deng made his move. Everyone knew that the Buddhist sect had a Sky Origin Stage expert overseeing it. A Sky Origin Stage expert was a huge threat to the Zhu country. They had to either subdue him or eliminate him. Therefore, King Gus had specially sent people to persuade Tu Deng to submit to the Zhu country. However, he never thought that the Buddhist sect would actually support Princess Kaler. He never thought that the influence of the Buddhist sect would be so great. All of a sudden, King Gus felt a little scared. Princess Kaler had over 10,000 spirit cultivators in her hands and many experts under her command. Adding the support of the people, it could be said that the situation was already set. There was also the Buddhist sect. If the Buddhist sect had submitted to Kaler, it meant that the Sky Origin Stage expert, Tu Deng, was also on Kaler's side. In the Imperial City, who could deal with a Sky Origin Stage expert? King Gus immediately thought of the Royal Consecration Hall. The only ones who could save him were the few experts in the Royal Consecration Hall. But what he was worried about was that those people might not make a move. Princess Kaler was the daughter of the previous king, and indeed had the qualifications to inherit the throne. This kind of matter was an internal struggle of the royal family, and the royal consecration hall would not interfere. Therefore, the key point was the Buddhist sect. If King Gus could prove that the Buddhist sect had submitted to Princess Kaler, it would be equivalent to the spirit cultivators sect joining in. This would give them a reason to invite the experts of the consecration hall. King Gus sat down, his eyes shining. After a while, he smiled and said, "There's no need to worry about this. You guys take care of your own duties. Leave the rest to me." With that, King Gus left, leaving behind a majestic back view for the crowd. Everyone suddenly felt relieved. It seemed that their king had found a way. In Lindbergh City, Princess Kaler was half happy and half worried after seeing the information. She asked Lung Shichi, "You can actually use the power of the Buddhist sect. This way, I can obtain a lot of people's hearts. However, with the participation of the spirit cultivator sect, I'm afraid that Gus will be able to invite the experts of the Royal Consecration Hall. I heard that the Buddhist sect has a Sky Origin Stage expert, but the Consecration Hall has several Sky Origin Stage experts. If they were to make a move, we wouldn't even have a chance of winning." However, Lung Shichi said, "Strictly speaking, the Buddhist sect is not a spirit cultivator sect. Moreover, the people who support you are only ordinary people. Gus might not be able to invite them. Even so, those people in the Consecration Hall don't know the true situation of the Buddhist sect. With Gus's scheming, he will definitely avoid the important points and add fuel to the fire. Once the Sky Origin Stage expert comes, we won't even be able to escape." Princess Kaler was a little anxious. Lung Shichi narrowed his eyes, and a trace of undetectable killing intent flashed through his eyes. He said, "So what?" Chapter 825. Princess Carol's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked up and down at Lung Shichi as if it was the first time she had seen him. What did you just say?" "Well, Your Highness, don't worry. I've arranged everything. You just need to wait for the throne." Princess Carol knew that Lung Shichi was hiding something from her, which made her feel like a tool. In fact, it was true, but Princess Carol was willing to be a tool. As long as she could take back the throne, she was willing to do anything. Perhaps from the beginning, there was only hatred in her heart. She didn't know when it started, but she coveted the throne more and more. A few days later, Lindbergh City was calm. This puzzled many people. Gus would never let Princess Carol continue to expand her reputation and power. Why didn't he take action? But some people knew very well that this was just the calm before the storm. At night, Lung Shichi sat cross-legged in the mansion of the governor of Lindbergh City. He opened his Byakugan and kept an eye on everything in Lindbergh City. Suddenly, dozens of powerful spiritual auras entered his field of vision. Lung Shichi snorted. Sure enough, they're here. It was King Gus. His idea was not to suppress the border with an army, but to kill Princess Carol directly with masters. As long as Princess Carol died, these traitors wouldn't be a problem. In the vision of Lung Shichi, there were 5 masters of the oneness of heaven and men realm, including King Gus, and more than 60 masters of the gang spirit realm. It seems that Gus has been secretly mobilizing these masters these days. Almost all the masters of the Zhu Lu kingdom have been transferred, but these people are far from enough. Gus doesn't dare to lead the army in person. Lung Shichi guessed that Gus probably also brought masters of the Tianyuan realm. Unfortunately, if the masters of the Tianyuan realm wanted to hide, his Byakugan wouldn't be able to find them. Now Gus was still dozens of miles away from Lindbergh City. With their speed, they could enter Lindbergh City in a moment. Lung Shichi immediately transmitted a message to Princess Carol. Gus is here. Go out and fight. Princess Carol's heart tightened. Gus had actually come in person. She had no time to think and immediately left Lindbergh City with Lung Shichi with all the masters of Gang Spirit Realm. Once they started fighting, the city wouldn't be able to withstand it. Meanwhile, Gus was leading a group of masters to approach Lindbergh City with murderous intent. As soon as they got close, they saw more than 20 figures standing outside the city gate. It was as if they knew they were coming. Uncle Gus, why didn't you inform me that you're coming to Lindbergh City so late at night? I could have prepared a feast for you. Princess Carol's voice came from the darkness. Gus stopped in his tracks. Initially, he had planned to sneak into Lindbergh City and take the city by surprise, but it seemed like they had been discovered long ago. He just didn't know if the other party had guessed correctly or if he had leaked some information on his side. Gus glanced at the people around him. There were very few people who knew about the assassination of Princess Carol, and almost everyone was here. Who leaked the information? However, there was no time for him to catch the traitor at this moment. He couldn't even show his suspicion. Otherwise, he would only panic first. Gus looked at Princess Carol and felt very strange. He said in a deep voice, "Little Carol, it's really lucky that you didn't die in the Battle of Gugod Peak. But why are you against me? It's not me who hurt your father and mother, but Sang Hitone. Also, since you've been hiding in Zhulu country for the past few years, you should know whether I've ever done anything foolish or wronged the people of Zhulu country since I ascended the throne. Now you're against me. I don't understand." As soon as he opened his mouth, he put himself on the side of innocence and justice. However, Princess Carol was no longer the Princess Carol of the past. She said in a cold voice, "Ridiculous. If I had shown up at Gugod Peak, I'm afraid I would have been killed by you. It's useless to say more. As the ruler of a country, didn't you also do a dirty thing like sneak attack tonight? Now that things have come to this, there's only one outcome between us." Gus was observing the spirit cultivators behind Princess Carol. They were all masters of the spirit astral realm. Most of them were recruited, and a few of them were from the Indian army. However, there was no one Gus wanted to see. According to Dea, when he led the Indian army to attack Lindbergh City, there were 4 people who were very strong, but they didn't appear at this moment. There were also 2 powerful masters of the unity of heaven and man realm. They were the ones Gus feared the most. Although the people he brought this time could absolutely crush Princess Carol in terms of strength, Gus was a meticulous person. He didn't allow any hidden dangers to exist. Since you've already said that, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. Gus formed a seal with both hands, and the sky suddenly became dark clouds. The power of water elements within a radius of dozens of miles surged crazily. The surroundings of Lindbergh City were filled with water vapor, and a powerful spirit technique was ready to be launched. Gus was still observing the surroundings. He didn't believe that the other party could remain calm. Then, a cloud of black fog suddenly appeared, and several figures walked out of it. They were Delta, Orgi, Yushu, and Oziu. Sure enough, I blew them out. Gus smiled proudly. He sneered and said, "Just the 3 of you? Where are the others? Come out. There's no need to hide. Otherwise, I'll have to collect your corpses." It's not certain who will collect whose corpses. Yushu immediately said sarcastically, "I have to admire you. As the king, you dare to fight in person and take away more than 80% of the masters of King City. I don't know if you're confident or conceited. Aren't you worried about your backyard being on fire?" Hearing this, King Gus felt that something was wrong. Since the other party already knew that he was coming, he naturally knew that King City was at its weakest now. There were only a few spirit astral realm masters left. If someone broke into King City at this time, the consequences would be unimaginable. Oh no, King Gus was anxious, but he immediately calmed down. After all, King City was King City, and there were masters of the Royal Hall of Worship secretly guarding it. Nothing serious would happen. As long as he could kill Princess Carol and the others in the shortest time and return to King City, all the crises would be gone. "Listen to my order. Go all out to eliminate the traitors," King Gus shouted. Immediately, he pressed his hands, and a torrential rain fell. Every drop of rain contained powerful water, spiritual power. The spirit cultivators on Princess Carol's side could only support their body-protecting spiritual gang to barely hold on. At this moment, a figure wearing the mask of the Emperor of Foam appeared strangely. He raised his hand, and hundreds of bloody balls scattered in the sky. Everyone was stunned when they took a closer look. Those were all human heads, and they were the heads of Gus's trusted subordinates. Chapter 826. Everyone was shocked when they saw the heads. King Negus's eyes were bloodshot. He had personally groomed the owners of these heads. Many of them had been with him since he came of age. They were his most trusted subordinates. Not only that, they all held important positions in the Zhu Road Kingdom. They were the pillars of the kingdom. But they were all dead. They were all dead. The head was thrown right in front of him, which made Gus furious. At the same time, he couldn't believe this was real. The dead people all had their own guards. They were scattered all over the kingdom. How could they be killed all at once? How chaotic would the kingdom be? Most importantly, there were Sky Origin Stage cultivators from the Royal Hall of Worship in the King's City. Under such circumstances, they were still killed. Even Sky Origin Stage cultivators could not stop them. How terrifying was the person who did it? Was it the Sky Origin Stage cultivator from a Buddhist sect? Gus couldn't do it, but he knew that his backyard was on fire. Carol, what a good move. I underestimated you. I'll take your life to appease my hatred. Gus was on the verge of going crazy. The dark clouds in the sky were like black clouds pressing down on the city. That shocking killing intent made everyone tremble in fear. Princess Carol couldn't believe it either. She had been with Lung Shiqi for the past few days. How could he go to the kingdom and kill so many people and then return to the kingdom? Even if he could fly, he couldn't do it. In fact, Lung Shiqi had Xiongming secretly go to the kingdom a few days ago. His original intention was to let Xiongming investigate Qing Si's strength. Who would have thought that Qing Si would bring his men to attack them? This gave Lung Shiqi a great opportunity. After Lung Shiqi notified Princess Carol, he turned around and teleported to the royal city through the underworld. What followed was a series of massacres. All of Gus's trusted subordinates died in his hands. It wasn't hard to get information on them. After all, they were all in high positions. Their whereabouts were easy to track. Moreover, they would have to kill Princess Carol sooner or later after she ascended to the throne. Now it was just a bit earlier. The Lung Shiqi used the Qian Kuan Earth movement technique to harvest lives mercilessly like a ghost. There were also several fierce battles that attracted a large number of Imperial guards. In the end, it even attracted the attention of the Sky Origin Stage cultivators who were guarding the city. Lung Shiqi immediately withdrew his attack, and under the cover of the Netherworld, the two of them teleported back from the royal city, which led to the earlier scene. At the same time, Lung Shiqi also got a secret message. Since there was only one Sky Origin Stage cultivator in the city, it meant the other powerful cultivators of the Zhu Lu Kingdom's Royal Hall of Worship were all around the city. Gus made a series of hand seals in a frenzy. Dazzling spiritual light illuminated the night sky as boundless water elemental power invaded this part of the world. Immediately after, a huge spirit crystal rose from the ground. Streams of water vapor shot out from the spirit crystal like a whirlwind. It was powerful enough to sweep through the entire area. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed. Gus' attack had some resemblance of a Sky Origin Stage cultivator. Of course, to him, it was still a bit weak. However, he was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he waved his hand, and two phantom-like figures appeared. It was Sword Demon and Beast Demon. You're finally willing to show yourselves. Unfortunately, with just the two of you acting mysterious, you'll still have to die. King Gus's anger transformed into boundless spirit energy that enveloped both the Sword Demon and the Beast Demon. Sword Demon used his finger as a sword and pointed it out. Boundless sword intent covered the sky and earth as if it was 10,000 swords returning to the origin. It tore through half of Gus' spiritual energy. At the same time, Beast Demon transformed into a huge, ancient, mutated beast. Its sharp claws tore through the sky and shattered Gus' spirit crystal. So strong, Gus exclaimed. He looked at Sword Demon and Beast Demon deeply, then looked at Lung Shiqi. Three Unity of Heaven Origin Stage cultivators were indeed a powerful force. Following which, Gus raised his arm and called out. For people stood beside him, all of them Unity of Heaven Origin Stage experts. So what if they were strong? Could they fight 3 against 5? As long as these three were dealt with, the rest of Princess Carol's group would be no more than lambs waiting to be slaughtered. King Gus, are you trying to take advantage of your superior numbers? If that's the case, I'm more than happy to oblige, Lung Shichi said calmly. He suddenly whistled, and several demonic roars could be heard. Four demonic beasts, surging with powerful demonic energy, appeared in the sky. They were a human-sized spirit monkey, a one-armed giant ape, a green snake, and a strange bird circling in the air. Demonic beast! Where did these demonic beasts come from? This is the first time I've seen a demonic beast in my life. They're all rank 6 demonic beasts. Seeing the appearance of the spirit monkey, both Princess Carol's group and Gus's group were shocked. The demonic Miasma Mountain Range and the northern wastelands were too far away from Zhulu country, so the people here could only learn about demonic beasts from books. More than 99% of the people here had never seen a demonic beast in their lives. Not to mention rank 6 demonic beasts comparable to Unity of Heaven origin stage cultivators. Moreover, in general, demonic beasts of the same level were stronger than spirit cultivators. After all, their demonic bodies were their most powerful weapons. The most inconceivable thing was that demonic beasts would actually listen to spirit cultivators' orders. Demonic beasts and humans were clearly mortal enemies. Everyone was at a loss again. Or had their ideas always been wrong? Gary, Bo Shi, and the other Unity of Heaven origin stage cultivators suddenly felt the pressure double. Just now it was 5 against 3, but in the blink of an eye, it became 5 against 7. Not only were their numbers, but the opponent's individual strength was also stronger than them. The result of this battle was already known without even fighting. At this moment, Gus was not in the mood to think about these things. On the contrary, his face was not as crazy as before. Instead, it became calm like an ancient well. Powerful, powerful. Gus praised Lung Shichi, as if he could already tell that Lung Shichi was the real core. If I did not prepare a backup plan, I might really die here. 3 lords, please show yourself. Suddenly, the origin energy of heaven and earth exploded, and 3 old figures stood in the air. To be called lords by Gus, and to have the ability to step on air, these 3 were undoubtedly Zhulu country's Imperial Consecration Hall Sky origin stage cultivators. The appearance of these 3 made Princess Carol and the others' faces turn ashen. In the end, Gus still managed to invite Sky origin stage cultivators. Their defeat was already destined, and they could even foresee the outcome of their deaths. On the other hand, Gus's morale was greatly boosted. They looked at Lung Shichi and Princess Carol as if they were looking at a pile of corpses. Gus raised his head and said, 3 lords, you have also seen it. This person has netherworld chi and can command demonic beasts. He is definitely not someone from our Zhulu country. For the throne, Carol did not hesitate to collude with the Buddhists and even collude with outsiders. She must be killed. None of the 3 old men paid attention to Gus. They were all staring at Lung Shichi. At this moment, Lung Shichi was wearing a large black and gold cloak like the Delta Orgi and the Feng Du Emperor's mask, making it impossible for others to see through him. However, the dense netherworld chi on his body actually made the 3 Sky origin stage cultivators feel a trace of threat. This made the 3 of them immediately think of a place, the Netherworld Temple. They suspected that Lung Shichi might be someone from the Netherworld Temple. This was no small matter, so one of them asked, "May I know your name?" Lung Shichi said word by word, "Underworld, Feng Du Emperor. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.